Chapter 24-27. Chu Yang sighed softly. He stretched out his hand and the door opened gently. A dazzling array of clothes of various colors came into view. She had seen this image before in the previous scene. However, the feeling of seeing the virtual image and seeing the real thing was completely different. At this moment, Zi Xiecheng was stunned as if she had been struck by lightning. There were faint bloodstains on the first few pieces of baby clothes. That should have been caused by her mother's hand when she was sewing the baby clothes due to her lack of proficiency. Zi Xiecheng squatted down and gently touched the bloodstains on the clothes. She said softly, "Mother. Mother tilde." She walked over step by step. It could be seen that Ling Piaoping was getting more and more proficient in sewing clothes. However, there were so many clothes here. Even if it was made by a peerless expert, it would still take a lot of time. Because a peerless expert did not mean that she was a peerless sewing expert. Every stitch and thread was a mother's ardent love and care for her child. They were all filled with deep love and devotion. Also, the guilt of not being able to personally raise her child. She was trying her best to make up for it in this way. She was trying her best to make up for the child that she could not see. She was using everything that he or she could feel. Zi Xiecheng's emotions that had just calmed down suddenly broke down again. She covered her face with her hands and cried bitterly. Ever since Zi Xiecheng was born, there had never been a day where she cried so many times like today. Or rather, she had never cried before. But in this room that was filled with her mother's aura, Zi Xiecheng cried bitterly. Her heart was broken and she was hovering between life and death. Chu Yang quietly held Mo Qingwu's hand. He gently retreated. He gently closed the door and left Zi Xiecheng alone inside. This room only belonged to Zi Xiecheng alone. At this moment, although she was sad, although she was in pain, although she was bitter, but what Zi Xiecheng needed most was to be alone. With her mother. With her mother's aura alone in this room. Quietly interacting with each other and being alone. Although Chu Yang could not bear to do this. But this was the only way. At the same time, he also realized one thing. From now on, this room would probably become Zi Xiecheng's sacred place. An unshakable sacred place. But was it a good thing or a bad thing for Zi Xiecheng to keep this room? Chu Yang could not understand. The benefits were obvious. It was tough and tiring. She could come in. This was her mother's embrace. Here, he could vent some of the grievances in his heart and disperse much of his depression. At the very least, it was a place to reminisce. However, the disadvantages were equally obvious. If Zi Xiecheng's heart was always in this room, if she could never walk out of this state of mind, she would never be truly happy in this lifetime. Mo Qingwu could understand Chu Yang's worries. She said softly, "Don't worry. Sister Zi is so strong, she will definitely walk out on her own. Furthermore, I believe that the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor did not arrange such a place just to make his daughter sad. How could a big shot like him not consider this? This kind of thing can't be rushed. We can only take one step at a time." Mo Qingwu looked at Chu Yang encouragingly. "That's the only way. I hope your idea comes true." Chu Yang sighed and nodded. The two of them left the tribulation space and began to travel at full speed. He sped all the way to Zi Xiaotian. Now, the primary goal was to fulfill Zi Xiecheng's wish. But along the way, in the first 10 days, Zi Xiecheng did not come out. She just stayed quietly in that room filled with motherly love. No one knew what she was doing. But at this time, no matter what, they could not disturb her. They could not bear to disturb her. Although Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu were very worried, they did not dare to go in and persuade her. If they did, it would be counterproductive and not beautiful. Seeing Zi Xiecheng now, Chu Yang could not help but think of his own past. In the past, he was like Zi Xiecheng, not knowing who his parents were. But he was happier than Zi Xiecheng. He had a master, a junior brother, a senior sister, and, later on, he found out about his identity. His parents were still alive, but Zi Xiecheng now. This also led to the dullness of the journey. Chu Yang didn't even tease Mo Qingwu anymore. One must know that teasing Mo Qingwu in the past was one of Chu Yang's greatest joys. He used to tease Mo Qingwu and make her blush, pout, and chase after him. Along the way, it was really like chasing the stars and the moon. With the speed of these two high-level saints, they had already left Ink Cloud Heaven's territory in a few days. Flying above the ocean that separated one side of the world and the other side of the world, the two of them had already crossed the Demon Emperor Heaven's territory and crossed the Mist River. They entered the East Royal Heaven that they had not seen for a long time. The two did not stop at all and rushed all the way to the northeast. On the 17th day, there was already a sense of desolation. Chu Yang made a rough estimate and was actually shocked by himself. He had already brought Mo Ching Wu and rushed for no less than 300,000 miles. They had crossed 4 big worlds and finally approached the legendary border of Purple Cloud Heaven. Here, it was almost tens of thousands of miles of desolation. Every few hundred miles, there was a relatively eye-catching road sign and stone tablet. The nearest one wrote, 7,300 miles ahead is the Fallen Area. Fallen Area. Looking at these 3 words, Chu Yang suddenly felt an extremely strong anger rising from his heart. What was a fallen area? That was Purple Cloud Heaven. Although it had fallen temporarily, but that was still Purple Cloud Heaven. How did it become a fallen area in the eyes of these officials? Although he logically agreed that there was nothing wrong with the officials putting up such a notice board, Chu Yang still couldn't accept it emotionally. The place that such a peerless hero had once fought and defended with his life was actually in the eyes of others. It had become a fallen area. What a bullshit fallen area. Chu Yang stood in front of the nearest road sign and stone tablet for a long time. Suddenly, he used his fingers like a knife and drew. His finger pointed. Stone chips flew and many words slowly appeared on the stone tablet. Chu Yang added a paragraph of his own words on the stone tablet. Although Purple Cloud Heaven has now become a fallen area, this is still the place where heroes had once fought bravely. Those heroes who had once fought could also smile and feel no guilt when faced with this so-called fallen area. But those who did not participate in the battle and watched coldly from the sidelines, although they were still alive, their hearts, they had already fallen long ago. Those places are the real fallen areas. The ones who have truly fallen are the people's hearts, not Purple Cloud Heaven. Then, Chu Yang signed his name. Chu Yang. Even though he was filled with resentment, he still couldn't vent his anger. However, he could only let out a heavy sigh. At this moment, there was a sudden movement in the tribulation space. There was movement on Zi Sheqing's side. Chu Yang hurriedly let her out. At this moment, Zi Sheqing was dressed in white, but it was not the style she usually wore. The style she was wearing now was more reserved and more elegant than the original one. This should be the clothes that Ling Piaoping had made for Zi Sheqing back then. There was no sadness or joy on Zi Sheqing's face, only calmness. In fact, there was a faint satisfaction and gentleness. She was like a completely different person from before, but she was definitely not the kind of person who was hysterical because of excessive grief. Chu Yang was stunned for a moment. This was very different from what he had imagined. What are you looking at? Zi Sheqing smiled sweetly. There was actually some gentleness in her expression. This sentence really gave Chu Yang a shock. Since when did Zi Sheqing speak in such a feminine manner? Then, he understood. However, he sighed in his heart and said, "You look like your mother now." Zi Sheqing's face was filled with joy. She said, "Really?" Then, she turned around and saw the stone tablet in front of her. Her face darkened and she said angrily, "Since when did our Purple Cloud Heaven become a fallen area?" She waved her hand, obviously wanting to destroy this stone tablet. Chu Yang hurriedly stopped her. "Don't be rash." As they were talking, there was a sudden rustling sound in the sky. Someone said sternly, "Who is it? How dare you damage the road sign stone tablet?" Following the voice, a man in black flew over and landed in front of the 3 of them. This person was tall and had long legs. He was wearing a long black cloak, like a black cloud, but he was extremely majestic. His face was rough, and his whole person looked as if it was made of steel. When he landed, he saw the words on the stone tablet at first glance. After a glance, he was actually stunned. Zi Sheqing said coldly, "Purple Cloud Heaven is the Purple Cloud Heaven of the Heavenly Imperial Court. Since when did the people of the heavenly imperial court not recognize purple cloud heaven as a part of the world? Why do they keep talking about fallen areas? What does it matter if such a road sign stone tablet is destroyed? That man looked at the three of them with an unusually complicated gaze and sighed deeply. He came with a belly full of anger, but after hearing the three of them reprimanding him, he was actually speechless. There was a hint of embarrassment on his bronze-colored face. He said, that. I won't pursue this matter further. You'd better leave this place quickly. Young people, better not come to such a place. Be careful not to get into trouble. As he said, he looked at the road sign stone tablet again. Finally, there was a look of shame on his face. He said, this road sign was made by us brothers in the beginning. Our original intention was to warn future people not to step into places already occupied by the extraterrestrial demons so as to avoid getting killed. But we didn't expect that there would be such a flaw. It's our fault. Chu Yang nodded. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Zi Xieching say sternly, you have good intentions, but have you considered the feelings of the people of Purple Cloud Heaven? Have you thought about the feelings of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor and the others who had fought for Purple Cloud Heaven till the last moment? Chapter 24-28. If it were you, would you be willing to allow others to call the homeland that you love so dearly a fallen area? Do you know how many unyielding and loyal souls are buried in this area? Which one of them isn't more noble than the people of the Heaven Imperial City who are still singing and dancing now? The burly man was at a loss for what to do. He was speechless for a moment, and beads of sweat actually appeared on his forehead. After a while, he said in a flurry, I'll go back and discuss how to change it. Chu Yang pulled Zi Xieching and said, I'll have to trouble you then. However, the words fallen area are indeed not very nice. The burly man smiled honestly and said, yes, we indeed didn't consider it enough back then. May I ask if the three of you have a deep relationship with the Purple Cloud Heavens? If they didn't have a deep relationship, they wouldn't be so agitated, right? But he didn't expect that among the three people in front of him, one was the daughter of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor and the other was the inheritor of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor. The only one who wasn't directly related to them was Mo Qingwu, the sister of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor's daughter, the wife of the inheritor, and the exclusive inheritor of the martial techniques of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Empress. Chu Yang didn't answer this question directly. He only looked at the burly man in front of him with undisguised admiration. He smiled and said, there aren't many of you here, right? He paused and said, or rather, there aren't many people who are still fighting in the Purple Cloud Heavens now, right? The burly man immediately became vigilant. Who are you people? Why are you asking these questions? A kind of warmth rose in Chu Yang's heart. He suddenly thought of a few sentences, opening the reincarnation passage with the body, opening the door to the outer realm, bones as the wall, flesh as the road, blood as the wind, and soul as the sky, sending my brother to the outer realm to fight the extraterrestrial demons, nurturing my brother and reconstructing his physical body. Becoming an immortal golden body, helping my brother to dominate the outer realm and achieve immortal achievements, letting my brother enjoy the glory of heaven and earth and receive the supreme glory. As he thought about it, he asked tentatively, do you know Brother Jie? Upon hearing this, the burly man's expression changed immediately. Who exactly are you? The burly man shouted fiercely. An ominous glint flashed in his eyes as he looked at Chu Yang with a murderous look in his eyes. His hand was already holding the hilt of his sword. It could be seen that the words Brother Rob had seriously touched this big man's psychological defense line. Chu Yang could trigger a life and death battle if he said something wrong. Does it matter who I am? I'm just a junior, so even if I told you, you wouldn't know. Chu Yang sighed. His expression was filled with desolation. I'm just casually asking you a question. You don't have to be so nervous. I'm not your enemy. What Brother Jie? The burly man shouted. What kind of weird name is that? I've never heard of it. There has never been a brother here. He roared loudly. His eyes were filled with murderous intention as he glared at Chu Yang. With a stern voice, he said, if it weren't for the fact that you're still young, I would have made you bleed 3 feet today. If you know what's good for you, leave quickly. When you encounter the heavenly demons, don't blame me for not warning you beforehand." After saying this, he suddenly shot up like a meteor and instantly disappeared without a trace. Mo Qingwu looked at the burly man leaving, deep in thought. She said, "Chu Yang, do you think his—" Chu Yang nodded deeply and said solemnly, "He must be. Apart from them, I believe no one else would have such a big reaction to the words Brother Jie. If he was a native of the Heaven Imperial Court, he wouldn't know what Brother Jie is at all." Deep sorrow appeared on Chu Yang's face. He said, "The previous master of the Jie sword. I don't know when this misunderstanding will be resolved. I originally thought that Wu Jueqing had come to the Heaven Imperial Court. Perhaps this misunderstanding has already been resolved. Turns out, the misunderstanding is actually still." The three of them continued forward. After walking for about a few thousand miles, they saw white fog in front of them. It was so dark that they couldn't even see their own fingers. Below them was actually a huge river. No one's divine consciousness could extend in this city of white fog. No one's cultivation could fly in this city of white fog. This kind of place was similar to Misty River, but it was different. The white fog connected the sky above and the river below. There was no end to it. And on this river, there was only one bridge. A bridge that was only 30 feet wide. If one wanted to go to the other side, one could only cross this bridge. Otherwise, even if one had the cultivation of a saint, one could only walk across this bridge step by step. On the other side of the bridge, there was a stone tablet. On it were written 5 big words: "The first pass in the world." There were no castles or checkpoints. Just this bridge was the first pass in the world. When Chu Yang saw it, he couldn't help but sigh softly. What a great first pass in the world. It lives up to its name. It was indeed the first pass in the world. It was really a pass that one man could hold against 10,000. This was the only passageway from the purple cloud heavens to the other parts of the Heaven Imperial Court. When Chu Yang and the other two stepped onto this bridge, they instantly felt a very strange feeling. Zi Xueqing couldn't help but say, "If my father could retreat to this side of the bridge and just defend it, wouldn't no matter how many billions of extraterrestrial demons came, they wouldn't be able to cross? Why would my father still fight the enemies on the other side of the bridge?" Chu Yang sighed deeply. Once you cross this bridge, you're no longer in the purple cloud heavens. With the pride of the purple cloud heavenly emperor, why would he cross this bridge? He would rather die on the other side of the bridge than return to the east side of the bridge. Zi Xueqing looked at this bridge in a daze. After a long time, she also sighed deeply. Chu Yang was absolutely right. This was indeed the fundamental reason why the purple cloud heavenly emperor didn't retreat back then. I'm the purple cloud heavenly emperor. If I had to abandon my homeland and go to other people's territory to fight, how could I still be called the purple cloud heavenly emperor? Wouldn't it be better to just call me a stray dog? Although the purple cloud heavenly emperor wasn't in front of them, his state of mind at that time was still on the verge of appearing. There was no need to have any doubts. The three stepped onto the bridge and walked into the white fog. After walking for less than 3,000 feet, they heard someone in front of them ask, "Who are the visitors? This place is forbidden." The voice was resolute and filled with a tyrannical meaning that there was no room for compromise. Chu Yang frowned. He thought to himself that this wouldn't be easy to get through. Following the voice, a golden light suddenly flashed in the white fog. 3 people flashed out and crossed the bridge, blocking the way. 2 of them had long hair and golden robes while the other was dressed in white. At this moment, they were looking at Chu Yang and the other 2 with scrutiny. "Who are you people?" Perhaps it was because they saw that Chu Yang, Zi Xueqing, and Mo Qingwu were all humans and came from the direction of the Celestial Imperial Court. Furthermore, the man was handsome and elegant while the woman was beautiful and peerless. At one glance, they didn't look like bad people. They had a good impression of them and their tone was more or less gentler. Chu Yang smiled and said, "Everyone has worked hard. The few of us are descendants of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Imperial Court. We want to go over and see our homeland." "Descendants of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Imperial Court?" The white-robed man frowned and said lightly, "You must be joking. There are no descendants of the purple cloud heavenly now. After this first bridge, it will be the battlefield. There are only warriors. And I dare to guarantee that there are no warriors of the purple cloud heavenly. Zi Sheqing sneered and said, that's because before you came, the warriors of the purple cloud heavenly had already sacrificed themselves heroically. The white-robed man looked solemn and said, that's right. Therefore, right now, my brothers and I are fighting in the homeland of the heroes. We can't let down the land under our feet. Every inch of land is stained with the blood of heroes. Zi Sheqing took a deep breath and her tone became much gentler. Please make way. Let us pass. Let us see our homeland. The white-robed man looked at Zi Sheqing with a sharp gaze and asked almost word by word, but where is your homeland? In the purple cloud heavenly. Zi Sheqing was about to explain, but when she thought of the name of the city that she was so proud of, she suddenly felt a sense of pride. She puffed out her chest and said loudly, my homeland is the Purple Imperial City. Purple Imperial City. The white-robed man's expression changed and became stern. The Purple Imperial City, as early as 1,000,000 years ago, had already turned into ruins with the fall of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor. None of the tens of millions of people of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor were spared. Even the whole family of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor sacrificed themselves heroically. Isn't it a little too boastful for you to claim to be a descendant of the Purple Imperial City? Ha ha! You're blaspheming the homeland of heroes. Zi Sheqing said, do I need any proof to say that I'm from the Purple Imperial City? The white-robed man did not relax and said, that's right. You need proof of identity. If you say that you're a descendant of the people of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor, I can still believe it. But now that you say that you're a descendant of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor, I have to ask clearly. Otherwise, others can go over. Even the people from the various big sects and heavenly palaces who came for the trial can also go over. But only you, miss, can't go over. He smiled coldly. You mentioned the 3 words Purple Imperial City and claimed to be a descendant of the Purple Imperial City. Whether it's intentional or not, you're blaspheming the most respected person in our hearts. Because, you're a fake. And the meaning behind this name can't be impersonated by anyone. Zi Sheqing was agitated and said, the most respected person in your hearts. Who? The white-robed man looked at Zi Sheqing coldly and said lightly, there's no harm in telling you. This isn't a secret in the first place. That person is the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor who fought alone until his death, Zi Hao. His sharp eyes looked at Zi Sheqing and his words were even sharper. Miss, if you want to deceive others. We can't do anything about it in other places, but in this land, there's absolutely no one who can blaspheme the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor in front of us. Zi Sheqing was not angry when she heard that. Instead, she felt gratified and proud. But at the same time, she was also a little depressed. Chapter 24-29. Looking at their expressions, he knew that he had gotten himself into trouble by saying descendants of the Purple Imperial City. Otherwise, he could have just made up a random sect name and pretended to be a member here for the trial, and he could have passed. But only the words Purple Imperial City and Heavenly Emperor of Purple Clouds were a huge taboo. But, even though he had committed such a taboo and was blocked here, he couldn't get angry at all. Because the person they respected the most was his father whom he respected and loved the most. Zi Sheqing turned to look at Chu Yang as if asking for help. Chu Yang took a step forward and said respectfully, the 3 of you are so loyal to your duties that I really admire and respect you. But may I know your names? The 2 at the side wanted to speak, but the man in white raised his hand lightly. Just a slight raise of his hand, and the 2 at the side immediately stopped talking. The man in white looked at Chu Yang and said dispassionately, asking for names, are you trying to build connections? It's a pity that this is useless to us brothers. Young man, Purple Cloud's heavens is not a place you should come to. Go back to where you came from, lest you lose your life by accident. Although the man in white's voice was calm, his eyes were exceptionally sharp, as if he could see through people's hearts. This kind of gaze reminded Chu Yang of Mo Tianji. Suddenly, Chu Yang vaguely guessed the identities of these people. Although he couldn't name these people, Chu Yang dared to be certain, to be able to guard this first bridge, to assume such an important position. They must be those people. The previous generation's tribulation brothers. And this man in white in front of him. He was very likely the brains of the previous generation's tribulation brothers. He was roughly equivalent to Mo Tianji and Diwu Chouchang. He was the core figure of the tribulation brothers. Chu Yang's mind turned. He said, "Since all of you are so loyal to your duties here and don't let us pass, I can't do anything about it. I just want to ask about a person. I heard that this person also came here a few days ago but hasn't returned. Do you know of such a person?" The man in white's eyes flashed. He asked calmly, "Who? What's his name?" Chu Yang said, "His name is Wu Juecheng." At this moment, Chu Yang's gaze was fixed on the faces of the three people in front of him. If Wu Juecheng had been here before, he believed that it was impossible for these people not to know. Regardless of whether these people and Wu Juecheng were brothers of tribulation in the same era or not, they were all once tribulation. There had to be a mutual exchange of information. Especially when they were comrades who fought on the same battlefield. Lin Sanju believed that as long as they knew this name, their expressions would change. Even if the white-robed man was able to control his expression, the other two men beside him might not be able to do the same. Chu Yang stared at the faces of the three without blinking. Unfortunately, there was no expression on their faces at all. It was as if he had heard a completely unfamiliar name. "What, Wujue City, Ju City? We've never heard of that name." Chu Yang sighed. From the looks of it, it shouldn't be an act. In other words, it meant that Wu Juecheng hadn't arrived yet. Or perhaps they had already arrived, but had yet to arrive here. Two questions arose in Chu Yang's mind. Firstly, Chu Le and Mo Tianji had gone to look for Wu Juecheng. Where were they going to look for him? Secondly, how was he going to get past this hurdle? Fight. That was definitely not possible. Even if he didn't consider whether he could defeat them or not, even if he could, he couldn't. These people in front of him were the main battle forces guarding the borders of the purple cloud's heavens. If he injured them, wouldn't that be equivalent to indirectly helping the extraterrestrial demons? Besides, the people in front of him were quite powerful. He might not be able to defeat them. Besides, who knew how many people were waiting ahead along the way? Did he really have to fight his way through? Right at this moment, Zi Sheqing gritted her teeth, stepped forward and said, "How do you know that I'm not the descendant of the purple cloud's heavenly emperor city? Didn't you want evidence?" "I'll give you evidence." Chu Yang was shocked. He hurriedly said, "Don't be rash." What he was afraid of was not that Zi Sheqing couldn't prove her identity. It wasn't too difficult to prove one's identity. The real problem was that once Zi Sheqing revealed her identity, who knew what kind of storm it would cause in this world? Now, everything wasn't ready yet. At least, it wasn't a good time now. Zi Sheqing gritted her teeth and said, "What do I have to be rash about? Isn't it just to prove my identity? Is my identity so shameful?" Chu Yang smiled bitterly. "Your identity isn't shameful, it's too shameful." Of course, to some people, Zi Sheqing also seemed to belong to the category of shameful. That white-robed man looked at Zi Sheqing with a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth. He said, "Could it be that your identity is really earth-shattering?" It was obvious that he was trying to provoke him. But what he did was really too obvious. He didn't hide it at all, which made the provocation even more effective. At least to Zi Sheqing, it was very effective and irresistible. Zi Sheqing said lightly, "You don't have to provoke me. I've already decided to reveal my identity long ago. Because I'm full of pride towards my identity." She flipped her palm, and a seal suddenly appeared in her palm. A seal only the size of a finger. But the moment the seal was taken out, it suddenly shone brightly and filled the air with purple gas. A vast aura that only a ruler could have spread out in a mighty manner. The seal suddenly grew in size by itself, instantly becoming the size of a human head. Zi Sheqing held the seal in her hand. With a bang, the seal landed on the bridge. Suddenly, 4 large words appeared on the bridge deck. "Ancient purple clouds." The three people opposite her were stunned when they saw the four words. They were suddenly stunned and took 3 steps back at the same time. They exclaimed, "Purple Cloud's Heaven's Imperial Jade Seal." This seal was a sacred item of the Purple Cloud's Heavens, the Purple Cloud's Imperial Jade Seal that belonged exclusively to the Purple Cloud's Heavenly Emperor, Zi Hao. Ever since Zi Hao died in battle, the whereabouts of this sacred item of the Purple Cloud's Heavens were unknown. But they never thought that it would appear here today. "Who exactly are you?" The three people looked at Zi Sheqing with a different gaze. It was no longer disdainful like before. Instead, it was filled with respect and anticipation. The Purple Cloud's Heavenly Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal, other than himself, could only be used by the direct bloodline of the Purple Cloud's Heaven. If outsiders got their hands on it, it would at most be an ordinary seal. Only in the hands of Zi Hao and his family would it be able to unleash unparalleled power. Only then could they command the purple clouds and not dare to disobey. Zi Sheqing took a deep breath and said quietly, "The Purple Cloud's Heavenly Emperor, Zi Hao, is my father." When she finally said the Purple Cloud's Heavenly Emperor, Zi Hao, is my father in front of others, Zi Sheqing's heart was filled with indescribable pride. Previously, Zi Sheqing had always looked down on the second generation of the rich and powerful. But at this moment, Zi Sheqing suddenly experienced that feeling. Pride. Because I have a hero as my father. Although he was no longer around, in this world, as long as his name was mentioned, there would be no one who didn't know, no one who didn't know, and no one who didn't respect him. The Purple Cloud's Heavenly Emperor, Zi Hao, is my father. However, the impact of this sentence was far beyond Zi Sheqing's expectations. In an instant, the attitude of the three people opposite her changed. "Is this true?" Someone at the side asked. The man in white shouted angrily, "Shut up." To be able to use the Purple Cloud's Imperial Jade Seal with his own bloodline, if he is not the direct bloodline of the Heavenly Emperor, what else can he be? With such evidence, is there a need for other proof? "You idiot. It is indeed the princess." The man in white's gaze became passionate and respectful. Looking at the dazzling purple firmament Imperial Jade Seal, the three people in white knelt down and actually kowtowed respectfully. "Greetings to the senior heroes, greetings to the Heavenly Emperor." The three of them looked solemn. "Please rest assured, Your Majesty. But as long as my brother is here, we will never let the extraterrestrial demons step into the Heavenly Imperial Court." The reason why the three of them were so polite was not to pay respects to Zi Sheqing, but to show the highest respect to the Purple Cloud's Heavenly Emperor. Only when one came to the Purple Cloud's Heavens could one imagine the greatness of the Purple Cloud's Heavenly Emperor. Zi Sheqing moved sideways to avoid them. She raised her father's Imperial Jade Seal with one hand and accepted their kowtow. For a moment, her heart was filled with joy and sorrow. Pride and sadness, pride and longing, all intertwined together. "I am the daughter of the Purple Cloud's Heavenly Emperor." Even after 1,000,000 years, it still shone with boundless radiance. Just like the Purple Cloud's Imperial Jade Seal, which swept the world, was not covered in dust. "Thank you for your kindness," Zi Sheqing said sadly. Zi Sheqing said sadly, "I thought, after so many years, my father's name has long been forgotten by people." "No, definitely not." The man in white stood up with a solemn expression and said solemnly, "The name of His Majesty, the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor, will be remembered forever even after another 10,000,000 years. The name of a hero must not be buried, and it will not be buried. Your Highness." The man in white stood up straight. Although he had already confirmed Zi Sheqing's identity and had paid his respects to the Heavenly Emperor of Zi Xiao, he still did not back down. "Although your identity is already confirmed, it is precisely because of this, all the more reason why you cannot enter." "What? What did you say? Why?" Zi Sheqing widened her eyes. What did he mean by not letting her in when she was not clear? Now that her identity was clear, she was still not allowed to enter. What was this? "It's too dangerous inside." The man in white laughed bitterly. "Past this bridge is the homeland of the Purple Cloud's Heavens. Especially the 3,000 miles in front of the first bridge, there have been constant battles for hundreds of thousands of years." Chapter 2430. In these hundreds of thousands of years, the number of people who have died here, or the extraterrestrial demons, has exceeded at least 100 billion. The man in white took a deep breath. Even a high-level saint may die here at any time. Her Highness is of noble status, and she is also the only descendant of His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Clouds. We can't afford to lose her. So, you can't go over. Xi Sheqing was really helpless. Before she revealed her identity, you guys wanted it. Now that she had one, you guys actually refused to let me go. Even though she knew that the people in front of her had good intentions, she still couldn't let it go. It's like this. Chu Yang touched his nose and smiled bitterly. With his many years of experience, he could tell that among the three people, this man in white was someone similar to Mo Tianji. At the very least, he was at Xie Danqiong's level. And the other two belonged to Dong Wushang and Jimo's character. Well, I don't care about anything. Anyway, there's someone who can make the decision. We just have to fight. So, Chu Yang directly filtered out the other two people. He said to the man in white, "It's like this. Her Highness is His Majesty's posthumous child. Well, there's a reason why His Majesty fought the extraterrestrial demons until his death. So, His Majesty set the date of birth to hundreds of thousands of years later. Only recently did she know of her identity and origin." The man in white nodded. I understand. He sighed. Back then, Purple Cloud's heavens fought alone. It's a big mystery. His Majesty was able to make preparations in advance, which can be considered as preparing for a rainy day. I completely understand. Chu Yang had a whole new level of respect for him. This guy's IQ was really not low. This was probably what they meant by listening to the sound of the strings, wasn't it? So, about Her Highness's identity, Chu Yang said. This definitely needs to be kept a secret. The man in white nodded again. Please rest assured. Today's matter, including Her Highness's identity, will definitely not be leaked from the three of us. Chu Yang nodded. I believe in your promise. It's just that I mentioned earlier that Her Highness only knew of her identity recently, so she wanted to come to Purple Cloud's heavens. Not to, understood. It's human nature. The man in white nodded in understanding and continued on Chu Yang's behalf. Your Highness isn't really here to participate in the battle, nor is she here to train, nor is she here to take back the Purple Cloud heavens. She's only here to pay homage to her ancestors, to see the place where her father fought in the past, and to see her own hometown. Chu Yang nodded. You're absolutely right, so, that's why we should let you go and fulfill your wish. The man in white nodded. I understand what you're saying, but we still can't let you pass. Chu Yang couldn't help but get angry. He was so angry that his nose was crooked. Brother Qing has said so much, but it's purely a waste of saliva. Why are you like this? Why are you so unreasonable? It's not that I'm unreasonable, but if something happens to Her Highness, no one can bear the responsibility. The man in white said seriously, after crossing the first bridge, there are still 27,000 miles to go until we reach the Purple Imperial City. Back then, His Majesty the Celestial Emperor specially chose the location of the Purple Imperial City at the edge of the Purple Cloud heavens. Do you know how many heavenly demons we might encounter during this 27,000 miles journey? How many battles will we have to go through? What price will we have to pay? Let me tell you, for so many years, no one on our side has ever been able to kill their way to the Purple Imperial City. The man in white sighed deeply. How can we not understand Her Highness' feelings? Could it be that we are really that heartless? If it's possible, even if we have to risk our lives, we'll still escort Her Highness there. Even if all of us die, as long as we can ensure Her Highness' safety, we'll be happy to do it. We even more hope to let the heroic spirits of this land know that the bloodline of His Majesty the Celestial Emperor they're loyal to has returned safely. We even more hope that the heroic spirit of His Majesty the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor can accept the worship of his direct bloodline. This is tantamount to reuniting the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor and his daughter. We understand. The man in white sighed deeply. But the problem now is, we don't have the confidence, not at all. We don't even have the confidence to escort Her Highness to the old site of the Purple Imperial City safely. We don't even have the confidence to escort Her Highness back from the Purple Imperial City. Do you understand if I put it this way? Chu Yang was completely silent. The other party's words were very straightforward, but completely irrefutable. It's human nature for Her Highness to be anxious to pay respects to her father. Besides, we've been fighting on this land for tens of thousands of years. Our feelings may not be much better than Her Highness' feelings right now. But it's precisely because of this that we can't bear any harm that Her Highness may suffer. Even if she loses a single strand of hair, to people like us, it's a great sin and a dereliction of duty. The man in white said seriously, we understand all of you, but we also hope that you can also understand us. Chu Yang realized miserably that not only did he not manage to convince this man in white, he was about to be convinced by him instead. He seemed to have only felt this kind of feeling from Mo Tianji in the past. May I know your name? Chu Yang asked seriously. Shen Yuan. The man in white smiled. Shen Yuan Changkong. Chu Yang pondered for a moment and said, Shen Yuan Changkong. A good name. Why do I seem to have heard this name before? Actually, due to the long history of this name, Chu Yang had never heard of it at all. When the sword spirit first introduced it, it only introduced the names of the previous masters of the Tribulation Sword. It did not introduce the specific identities of the previous tribulations in detail. Therefore, Chu Yang had never heard of this name before. But Chu Yang still firmly believed that this person must be one of the previous tribulations. He frowned as if he was deep in thought. Shen Yuan Changkong was obviously interested in his appearance. He said, You've heard of me. That's impossible, right? Our names have never spread outside the Heaven Imperial Court. Chu Yang frowned and thought hard. Not in the Heaven Imperial Court. I think I've heard of it in my hometown. Really? But why can't I remember at this moment? Shen Yuan Changkong's expression suddenly changed. He said somewhat excitedly, Your hometown? Where's your hometown? The other two people's faces also glowed red. They looked at Chu Yang expectantly. Chu Yang said indifferently, My hometown is in the Heaven Imperial Court. Have you heard of that place? This sentence was simply nonsense. But Chu Yang was afraid that if he directly pointed out the key point, the misunderstandings between the previous masters of the Tribulation's sword and tribulations had not been resolved yet. He was afraid that it would cause unnecessary trouble. For example, the person he just met. So, it was necessary to beat around the bush, even if the way was quite melodramatic. But so what if it was melodramatic? As long as it was effective. Heaven Imperial Court. The three people shouted at the same time. The man in white was muttering in a low voice, but the other two were simply excited. You're all people who ascended from the Heaven Imperial Court? It's the two of you? These two were, of course, referring to Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu. Yes. Chu Yang nodded honestly. I'm from the lower three heavens of the Heaven Imperial Court. My mother is from the martial arts clans of the lower three heavens of the Heaven Imperial Court. Fellow countrymen. The two men in gold almost shed tears. They grabbed Chu Yang's hand and looked fervent. So we're from the same hometown. Brother, we were originally from the Heaven Imperial Court. Such a coincidence. Chu Yang's face was full of surprise, even more pretentious. Phut. Cough, cough, cough. Mo Qingwu almost couldn't hold back her laughter. She hurriedly covered her mouth and pretended to cough, but it was very fake. How's the Heaven Imperial Court now? What's it like now? The two men in gold surrounded Chu Yang and asked urgently. The man in white was a little helpless about this, but he didn't stop them. His face was still calm, but he also perked up his ears to listen. A single person was actually chatting on the first bridge. As they chatted, the three people invited them warmly. Come. Let's go to our place and have a good chat. Sigh, I haven't been back to the Heaven Imperial Court for tens of thousands of years. I really miss home. They actually led the three people forward just like that. Zi Xieching followed beside Chu Yang with a straight face. She only felt that her heart was so ridiculous that she wanted to laugh. The other party was clearly so determined just now, but the mention of the Heaven Imperial Court completely changed their minds. They actually allowed them to enter their tent. Although there was still a possibility that they would be politely sent out after catching up, after all, there was already a buffer. To Zi Xieching and Chu Yang, with this buffer, it was equivalent to a big step forward. With a good start, perhaps the rest of the matters would be much easier to handle. Chu Yang and the other two followed the three people of the previous generation and walked forward for about 1,000 feet. Suddenly, their field of vision widened a lot. They realized that the bridge here actually extended out horizontally by a large section, and on the extra section of the bridge, there stood a fortress. There was only a passageway below this fortress. Above the passageway, there were actually rooms. Chu Yang couldn't help but feel dizzy. Such a design was really fucking original and unique, a work of the gods. No matter who wanted to pass through here, the people here only needed to wait at ease. When there was nothing to do, they could even sleep, rest, or practice martial arts in their rooms. When there was something to do, they could just come down and hold the fort. The only requirement was that you were a martial artist and could fly, and that was enough. Chapter 2431. However, to build such a house in this area, it seemed that the difficulty was also not ordinary. First of all, divine senses could not be used here at all. It was even more impossible to fly here and there. One could only rely on the most primitive lightness techniques to move around here. In order to build such a magnificent building, besides the huge amount of work involved, who knew how much risk they would have to take? Looking at Chu Yang's expression, the white-robed man Shenyuan Changkong laughed heartily. We built this house step by step. There are people here all year round. Even if we don't take turns to be on duty, there will still be people standing here alone. Therefore, we might as well build this house. We changed from one person to one person to one person to three people to one person so that we can be companions and chat with each other to get rid of loneliness. That's really a big deal. Chu Yang clicked his tongue in wonder. Building such a house is really difficult. I'm afraid that it's not an exaggeration to say that it's a life or death situation. If one were to accidentally fall down, I really don't know where to look for him. Shenyuan Changkong smiled reservedly. Everyone has been circling between life and death all year round. This little bit of danger is nothing to be afraid of. Actually, the original intention of building this house is to make life easier for everyone in the future. There's no need to give anything in return. We've lived in the land for a long time, and practice makes perfect. Danger can hardly be considered as danger, Chu Yang said sincerely. I'm saying that you're a bunch of desperados. The two people at the side patted Chu Yang's shoulder and laughed. Well said, we're desperados. They increasingly felt that this guy's words were really to their liking. Shenyuan Changkong's face was also filled with joy. However, he was also doubtful in his heart. This princess of the purple cloud heavens was the real deal. If she was not a direct descendant of the purple cloud heavenly emperor, she would definitely not be able to activate the purple cloud heavenly emperor's purple cloud tower. There was no need to doubt this point. As for the beautiful lady beside her, she was also very simple and honest. Her temperament would definitely not be crooked. These two ladies could be completely trusted. However, this black-robed man was really somewhat unfathomable. He looked young and tender, but in fact, he was full of inner qualities. It was as if his whole body naturally carried a kind of subduing aura. It was a feeling of déjà vu. It was a pity that he couldn't use his divine sense to observe carefully here. Otherwise, with his eyesight, he would have been able to see some clues. At the very least, he would be able to find out how high this guy's cultivation was. In addition, there was something else that they didn't understand. He had deliberately become friends with his two brothers in just a few words. The atmosphere was joyous and harmonious. Ever since that incident, these two brothers had always been silent, even in the face of Emperor Donghuang's occasional visits. Most of them didn't say a word. How did I get along so well with this guy today? This is really strange. If that was all there was to it, then it would have been fine. After all, they were just looking at each other. This was completely unreasonable. However, what was even stranger was that even though he knew that Chu Yang was deliberately welcoming the three of them, he still didn't feel any disgust towards him. Instead, he was happy to spend more time with him. Wasn't this an extremely strange thing? Shenyuan Changkong faintly had a thought in his heart. This black-robed man who calls himself Chu Yang seems to be very experienced in dealing with people like me. But how is this possible? He is only a few years old. I have tens of thousands of years of cultivation. My temperament has been tempered. How can I be seen through so easily? With a bellyful of doubts, he finally came to the room. The burly man in gold actually took the initiative to make tea. Ha ha. It's rare that fellow countrymen from my hometown come over. I have to take out my fifth brother's precious tea for everyone to taste. Shenyuan Changkong was stunned again. This guy actually doesn't treat this black-robed man as an outsider. You must know that I have spent a lot of effort to accumulate that tea. Usually, only these few brothers can drink it. Now that this black-robed man has come, the elder actually went to take it directly. This display of goodwill is too obvious. No need, no need. Chu Yang laughed. Dear brothers, I think you have been away from the heavenly layer for a long time. I have not ascended for a long time. Before I ascended, I was afraid that I would never be able to drink the tea of my hometown again, so I really brought a lot of tea specialties from the heavenly layer continent. Let's drink it today and try it, to comfort everyone's homesickness. Are you serious? The three of them raised their heads at the same time, their eyes shining. Even Shenyuan Changkong, who had always been profound and wise, had his eyes shining when he heard this. There was a hint of covetousness in his eyes. When these few people first came here, the whole process was full of bafflement. They didn't bring anything over. To put it bluntly, even if they wanted to find something to prove that they were indeed from the heavenly layer continent, they probably wouldn't be able to find it. This guy actually thought of bringing tea up in advance. What kind of explanation is this? Shenyuan Changkong immediately felt relieved. This guy probably ascended normally. He is different from us. As long as he has a space tool with a large capacity, it is reasonable for him to bring more things other than martial arts. Not only did Chu Yang have tea in his tribulation space, but they were all of the best quality. Ever since he saw that the elder ancestor Chu Xiaoshan liked tea so much, Chu Yang also fell in love with this stuff. Before he ascended, he had bought a lot of tea. All the famous tea in the heavenly layer was available. It was quite extravagant. When Chu Yang took out a packet of tea, he gathered the water vapor and boiled the tea. When the tea fragrance spread out, the dark green tea rolled back and forth in the teacup. An indescribable and wonderful tea fragrance rose in spirals just like that. The three people opposite him sniffed together, sniffing the long-awaited taste of their hometown. Their actions were a little comical, but Chu Yang and the other two only felt a heartfelt bitterness in their hearts. Such heroic figures, just for one belief, had to stay here, or never return to their hometown for the rest of their lives. Wasn't this also a kind of great cruelty? The three of them smelled the tea fragrance. At first, they were intoxicated, but gradually, they couldn't help but have their eyes turn red. They held up the teacup with infinite care. Looking at the tea in the cup, they were actually speechless for a moment. After a long, long time, the two tears in the eyes of the burly man in gold on the left dripped onto the green tea, making two ding-dong sounds. Although the sound was very soft, how could it escape everyone's ears? The burly man forced a smile and said, "The tea is really too hot. The dense steam is rising. It's so hot that it's making my tears come out." This sentence was such an inappropriate excuse, but it made the other two nod repeatedly, expressing their agreement. The scene in front of them was originally an extremely comical situation. A burly man holding a cup of tea and crying. But Mo Qingwu and the others didn't find it funny at all. Instead, their noses turned sour, and their eyes were watery. They were almost about to cry. Shenyuan Changkong held the teacup, raised his head, closed his eyes, and sighed deeply. Yes. It's the tea of my hometown. The tea of the heavenly layer continent. I will never forget this taste in my life. I originally thought that I had already forgotten it. Chu Yang's heart ached. When he reached out again, there was already a space ring in his hand. He passed it to Shenyuan Changkong. This is. There was a look of understanding in Shenyuan Changkong's eyes, but his tone was still filled with disbelief. He couldn't believe that such a surprise would actually happen to him. This is the tea of our hometown. Naturally, it should be drunk by the people of our hometown. Chu Yang took a deep breath. When I ascended to Heaven Imperial City, I brought a lot, except for the part that my mother made for me. I won't take out the rest for you. I collected the rest myself. I'll give them to all of you. In the future, on this purple cloud battlefield, when you're free from battle, feel the taste of our hometown. When you're away from your hometown, you miss the taste of your hometown the most. Shenyuan Changkong suddenly stood up, his eyes red. He received the space ring with both hands carefully, and said in an unusually solemn manner, "Thank you so much. We accept your kind intentions." The other two burly men in gold looked excited, gratified, and a little sad. Looking at the ring, they asked longingly, "How much is inside? How many times is it enough to drink? It's more or less a brother's kind intentions. How much do you care? Even if you can only drink it once, isn't it a great favor? This is the tea of our hometown. No matter how many purple crystals you have, where can you buy it?" Shenyuan Changkong glared at his two brothers, feeling very embarrassed. "These two are too greedy. Tea. How much of this thing can you bring with you? At most, bringing a few kilograms is already very good, right? You said that you're giving it all to us, but why didn't you keep half? These two are really useless. No matter how scheming you are, how much you want to know, you have to wait for them to leave and close the door before you look. You just have to shout it out in front of them. You've really lost the face of all of us brothers. There's really not much tea in here. It's really not enough to take out." Chu Yang smiled and said, "At most, it's less than 1,000 kilograms. 2,000 kilograms. Wow." The three of them exclaimed at the same time. Shenyuan Changkong was also one of those who exclaimed. 2,000 kilograms of tea. What the heck, how big of a figure is this? For these people, even 1 or 2 taels of tea was a rare surprise. That was just wishful thinking. But now, they had 1,000 kilograms. It was simply like a pauper who was so poor that he couldn't even afford to drink noodles suddenly having a mountain of gold. They instantly became nouveau riche. Wow, when they opened the ring and saw the actual inventory inside, the two burly men in gold couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. The taste of happiness instantly spread through their bodies. There's really so much. This isn't a dream, right? Chapter 2432. I won't say anything more. I'll take half a kilogram of it and put it on my bed to drink slowly. The golden-robed man danced with joy. He was so excited that his face was flushed. Drink a cup in the morning, drink a cup before going to bed at night. Shenyuan Changkong was also a little excited, but he still pretended to be calm and said disdainfully, "Can you tell the difference between morning and night in this white fog? Drink a cup in the morning, drink a cup in the evening. You're really good." Ah! The golden-robed man was immediately defeated. With these teas as a foundation, the relationship between Chu Yang and these three people warmed up again, leveled up. Explosive. From strangers to acquaintances, it only took half a cup of tea's time. It was as if they were sitting on a rocket to the point where they could call each other brothers. "Brother Tilda." The golden-robed man on the left slapped Chu Yang's left shoulder. "You're really good. I, Yang Fei, recognize you as my brother. Thank you. Ha ha ha. Such good tea. Brother." The golden-robed man on the right slapped Chu Yang's right shoulder. "Not bad. I, Yang Zong, won't say thank you to you. I've put everything aside in my heart." Chu Yang was caught off guard by the two big slaps. So, he fell on his butt with a crashing sound. Although his body could withstand the tremendous force, the chair he was sitting on couldn't withstand it. So, he still sat on the ground. Someone whose butt touched the cold ground couldn't help but have black lines on his forehead. Ha ha ha. Seeing Chu Yang's embarrassing situation, everyone laughed heartily. The two girls laughed especially, like flowers trembling. Suddenly, there was no longer any sense of alienation between everyone. "Brother, tell us quickly, what is Chongtian like now?" The three people asked at the same time. Chongtian continent, this story is really long. Chu Yang began to talk tirelessly. The three people listened with great interest. He described the landscape of the mountains and rivers, described the geography of the people, described the customs of the people. Chu Yang's mouth flowed like a river, and he talked endlessly, as if he could go on forever. The three people listened with great interest from the beginning. Slowly, he lost interest and even felt a little resentful. Because this guy was only describing this. He didn't mention anything about the people, geography, or local customs of the Chongtian continent. Or rather, he didn't mention anything that the three of them really wanted to hear. Even. There was no implication at all. Shenyuan Changkong was still able to maintain his composure. Although his face was gloomy, he was still listening attentively. However, Yang Fei and Yang Zong could no longer hold it in. After hesitating for a long while, Yang Fei finally stammered. It was as if he was sitting on a hedgehog. He said uncomfortably, "Well, apart from these, are there any other heroic deeds? Or the Great War of the Century, heroes? Hero? Are you talking about those legends and myths?" Chu Yang's face was full of confusion. Most of those are just exaggerations. What's there to talk about? Do you want to hear about this? Yang Fei was dumbfounded and could not help but swallow his saliva. However, he did not dare to say what he really wanted to say. He could only look at Shenyuan Changkong. When we were together, there would be legends and legends. There are also some legends. Although they're a little exaggerated, they're not too outrageous. Under the urging of his two brothers, Shenyuan Changkong finally opened his mouth unwillingly. However, the moment he opened his mouth, his originally clear voice became a little hoarse, and he even pretended to cough. At that time, we still remember. At that time, and Shenyuan Changkong said strenuously, and the legend of Tribulation Sword Master and Brother Tribulation. Those people might not be legends and legends, but they were always the best of the best. I wonder if you've heard of any similar legends? When he said this, the three of them looked at Chu Yang with burning eyes. Their eyes. Apart from unlimited anticipation, there was also unlimited nervousness, although they were deceived. Although they were deceived for a lifetime. Although they were harmed and almost used to death in the end, however, in the end, they still wanted to know some things. For example, how was their big brother, who had caused their brothers' souls to scatter, in the martial world? But were there any legends about him? In this battlefield, many of the warriors who were fighting against the heavenly demons were the same kind of people as their brothers. They knew each other's identities, but there was basically no deep communication. Especially when it came to the unbearable past, no one was willing to talk about it. The past was unbearable to recall, but they still wanted to know if their old friends were still alive. Now, Chu Yang in front of them was a person who had ascended. He should be different from the other people who came from the heavenly layer. They didn't know the inside story of tribulation, but they had the courage to ask about it. But of course, they didn't expect that they would accidentally find the person they were looking for. They didn't dare to ask about the previous tribulation. Instead, they asked about the current Tribulation Sword Master. "You're asking about this? You're talking about this?" Chu Yang's face showed a sorrowful expression. He said, "This matter is really too tragic. I did deliberately avoid this topic at first. When it comes to the legends and legends of our heavenly layer, we can't skip the legend of tribulation. But this legend is really too tragic, so I've been avoiding this tragic question. But I didn't expect you guys to take the initiative to ask this question." Sigh. Tragic. Too tragic. What do you mean? The three of them sat up straight at the same time, their eyes wide open. That matter. That person wouldn't have spread it out himself, right? He should be glorious. How could he be so tragic? And it seems like the whole world knows about it. Now in the heavenly layer continent, almost everyone knows about it. But everyone has the same attitude, which is to keep it a secret. Because every time they talk about it, they feel their hearts ache. In the heavenly layer imperial court, His Majesty Zi Hao, the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud, is recognized by everyone as a hero. But in the heavenly layer continent, the only legend that is recognized by everyone is the legend of tribulation. Chu Yang sighed deeply, his voice full of emotion. What? Heartache. Legend. Hurry up and tell us in detail. What happened? The three of them felt that their hearts were about to jump out of their throats. They couldn't wait to ask. It's a long story. If you didn't ask, I really didn't want to talk about it again. Such a peerless hero, died so tragically. Even his body died and his Tao disappeared, his soul scattered. Chu Yang sighed again and again. The three of them panted heavily at the same time. Could it be that he was talking about us? Could it be that what happened back then was already known to the whole world? Brother, please, tell us in detail. What is it that could shake the entire heavenly layer? Shenyuan Changkong could tell that Chu Yang didn't want to talk about it. So, he suddenly stood up and bowed. Then, he changed the topic and said seriously, "This matter is very important to us. Please." Yang Fei and Yang Zong asked at the same time. "All right." Chu Yang said solemnly, "Heroes can't be wronged forever. Since you said that this matter is related to you, I'll say it again. But, you have to be patient. I'll tell you the whole story in detail. Don't worry, we'll definitely be patient." The three of them nodded hurriedly. "We'll be very patient. Speaking of this matter, I'll have to start from the Tribulation Sword Master," Chu Yang said. He was interrupted by Yang Fei. "Ah? The Tribulation Sword Master? The Tribulation Sword Master is already at the Tribulation Sword Master? Shut up." Shenyuan Changkong and Yang Zong looked at Yang Fei fiercely and reprimanded him at the same time. Yang Fei sat down embarrassedly and scratched his head. "Sorry, I'm in a hurry. Shut up." The two of them shouted at the same time, "Stop and listen carefully. If you say one more word, get out." Yang Fei lowered his head and didn't say anything. Continue. The two of them turned to look at Chu Yang at the same time. The Tribulation Sword Master of the first generation came from a very ordinary sect in the lower three heavens. He was a handsome young man. When he was only 15 years old, he already became the Tribulation Sword Master of the first generation. Moreover, he was smart, handsome, and elegant. He was really a dragon among men, a peerless talent in the heavenly layer. Chu Yang began to narrate. After hearing this series of praises, the three of them thought, what's so strange about this? The previous Tribulation Sword Masters were all like this. Otherwise, how could they win the hearts of the people? This Tribulation Sword Master of the first generation brought his brothers and started from the lower three heavens, and so. He turned the tide and saved the day. His loyal heart shone brightly in the sun and the moon, and his spirit shone brightly in the stars. Chu Yang's voice softly described the story that was slightly exaggerated with artistic embellishment. Anyway, the main character of the story was simply a perfect person who was loved by everyone. Mo Qingwu leaned her head in Zi Xueqing's arms, as if she had already fallen asleep. Zi Xueqing also buried her face in Mo Qingwu's hair. The two of them were trying their best to control their emotions, but the two of them were already having a stomachache from holding it in. They really had never seen such a shameless and despicable person before. The two girls didn't dare to raise their heads. Once they raised their heads, they wouldn't be able to control the smile on their faces. In fact, they would be exposed on the spot. So, the Tribulation Sword Master came to the upper three heavens. This Tribulation Sword Master was so-and-so, chivalrous, courageous, righteous, upright, loyal, so-and-so. Then, he rushed to the upper three heavens. Chapter 2433. What exactly happened? The three of them listened attentively. Although the things that Chu Yang said might be a little exaggerated, but to them, they still felt that it was reasonable and reasonable. My brothers were probably like this back then. After this Tribulation Sword Master rushed up to the upper three heavens, he was surprised to find that the law enforcement officers, who were supposed to be his greatest support, were now completely opposing him. When the identity of the Tribulation Sword Master was exposed, the law enforcement officers and Dharma Supreme of the upper three heavens became even more aggressive. They directly mobilized the power of the whole world to go against the Tribulation Sword Master. For a time, the Tribulation Sword Master was basically going against the whole world, and the situation was very unfavorable. Chu Yang's voice was heavy. What's going on? How is this possible? The three of them were confused as well. The law enforcers have always been the biggest support for the master of the Calamity Sword. No matter when, as long as this force exists, it's the personal force of the master of the Calamity Sword. Why are they against the master of the Calamity Sword? Something must have gone wrong. Yes, something must have gone wrong. Chu Yang sighed. After many investigations, this first-generation Tribulation Sword Master discovered to his surprise that this Dharma Supreme, who is the head of the law enforcement officers, not only has a superb cultivation, he is also extraordinarily intelligent. What shocked him even more was, this Dharma Supreme actually knows everything about the Tribulation Sword Master and Tribulation Brother. He even knows about the Tribulation Sword technique and those elixirs and pills. It's the heavy elixir, Yang Fei said angrily. He really couldn't stand the fact that this guy's story was full of mistakes. Yes, it's that heavy elixir. In any case, it's an extremely miraculous elixir. Chu Yang readily accepted her advice. He immediately corrected himself. Let's not talk about these details. Hurry up and tell us what's going on. Under normal circumstances, only the Tribulation Sword Master himself knows these things. How did others know? Especially an outsider like the Dharma Supreme? Shenyuan Changkong couldn't understand. This mystery lasted until the end. It was only during the final battle that the truth was finally revealed. Chu Yang's voice was heavy. This Dharma Supreme is actually one of the previous tribulations. And he's the most irreplaceable think tank. What? The three of them were shocked. They were completely shocked to the extreme. They didn't expect such a strange thing to happen. But Chu Yang immediately stopped talking. Because he realized that there was a loophole in his story that should not have appeared. The fact that the Dharma Supreme's true body was Diwu Chochang. Chu Yang originally did not intend to announce it to the public. Regarding the Dharma Supreme's mental journey, Chu Yang had always felt very complicated. But it was undeniable that there was also a trace of admiration and a trace of pity. Even though he had done a lot of bad things, and even though he had planned to purge the entire world in the end. But Chu Yang still didn't want to speak ill of him. But now, in a moment of carelessness, he had revealed half of the truth. Chu Yang suddenly stopped talking. The three of them stood up anxiously at the same time. What happened next? What happened after that? What are you trying to do now? How could that Dharma Supreme be the brains of the previous tribulation? How can he go back? What the hell is going on? Why don't you continue? The three of them were so worried that they were about to go crazy. Seeing that they were about to reach the critical moment, this guy actually stopped talking. Wouldn't this make them depressed to death? Yang Fei jumped up and down. He was so anxious that he scratched his head. Say it, little ancestor. Don't tell me that at such a moment, you're going to say, what will happen next time? Then I'll definitely suffocate to death. I'm actually choosing my words carefully. I'll continue. Chu Yang had already made up his mind. He continued, and the reason why this former tribulation brother appeared here is to avenge his brothers. Avenge? You mean, avenge? The three of them exclaimed at the same time. Because the previous generation of Tribulation Brothers actually died in the hands of the Tribulation Sword Master. Chu Yang said, so, this Tribulation Brain. At the last moment, he desperately escaped from a place that was said to be mending the heavens. Then, he used all his schemes and tricks. He concealed his identity and became the head of the law enforcement officers, the Dharma Supreme. Everything he did was actually to find his elder brother, the Tribulation Sword Master of his generation, and ask him personally, why? Why? The three of them murmured absent-mindedly, yes. Why? These three words, we also want to ask all the time. But, where can we go to ask? But, when this brain came back to the world, thousands of years had already passed. In the heavenly realm, that's a very long time. But in the martial world, there's no longer any legend of this Tribulation Sword Master. Chu Yang said. That's impossible. That's impossible. The three of them jumped up at the same time. Although they didn't know who this previous generation tribulation boss was, and what kind of character he had, But how could a person who could become the Tribulation Sword Master and lead the Tribulation Brothers to the peak of the heavenly realm be an ordinary person? How could a person who could achieve such a feat become a nobody? Not to mention other things, all the brothers knew very well what kind of person their boss was back then. He was definitely a man of great talent and vision, unparalleled intelligence, and unparalleled wisdom. He had exhausted all his schemes to achieve all these. Next, even if he wanted to dominate the martial world, it wouldn't be difficult for him. How could he be a nobody? It's a pity that this is the truth. An indisputable truth. Chu Yang said. That's not right. Shenyuan Changkong frowned deeply. Even if the Tribulation Sword Master is no longer around, his clan must still be around. How could they disappear? Chu Yang frowned. Indeed, they didn't. Have you seen the previous Tribulation Sword Master's clan when you were around? I think I've only seen the Tribulation clan. Hearing this, the three of them were stunned. That's right, they fought every day back then, but they really didn't come into contact with any of the Tribulation Sword Master's clan. If it was really like back then, how could the Tribulation Sword Master not have a foundation to pass down his legacy? The three of them fell into deep thought. This seems like there's a problem. Chu Yang said solemnly, let me continue. Unable to find a way to ask, that tribulation strategist found another way and thought of ways to become a Dharma Supreme. He used the power of a Dharma Supreme to deal with the next Tribulation Sword Master who might appear. Finally, he waited. That battle wiped out all the clans in the three heavens on the heavenly level continent. Even all the martial artists in the heavenly level continent were affected. That was really an earth-shattering battle of the century, and it lasted for a long time. I can imagine. Shenyuan Changkong and the other two suddenly felt their blood boiling. There was a brother who was determined to go back and take revenge. In order to avenge his dead brothers and seek justice from the destined Tribulation Sword Master, he didn't hesitate to slaughter the world and bathe the heavenly level continent in blood. Although this didn't happen to them, just thinking about it made them so excited that their scalps tingled. And it was under such high pressure that the Tribulation Sword Master of the first generation struggled bitterly and actually broke through the last stage. Thus, he knew the true mission of the Tribulation Sword. At the same time, he also knew the tragedy behind all this. He knew the whole truth. Truth? What truth? The three of them asked at the same time. Yes, it's the truth. Chu Yang nodded slowly and said with a hint of sorrow, the truth is, the mission of the Tribulation Sword. The mission of the Tribulation Sword? What does the truth have to do with the Tribulation Sword? The three of them asked one after another, their eyes widening. How can it not have anything to do with it? It's very important. The hidden mission of the Tribulation Sword is to fight the extraterrestrial demons. Chu Yang said bleakly, the Tribulation Sword Master only knew in the end. The so-called gathering of the Tribulation Sword Masters was actually a selection. It was to choose the true candidate to fight against the extraterrestrial demons and quell the demons. He looked at the three of them and said, just like all of you, coming to the heavenly level Imperial Court, coming to the purple cloud heavens, guarding this fallen area and fighting endlessly. The breathing of the three of them became hurried in an instant. At the same time, she felt that her heart was suddenly lifted, as if it was being pulled out, and she almost couldn't breathe. Actually, it's like this. Chu Yang repeated what he had said to Wu Jueqing back then in detail. He said, because the Calamity Sword had never found a person who was truly qualified to inherit its legacy, it fell into a cycle of reincarnation again and again. While the previous masters of the Calamity Sword did not meet the requirements themselves, their brothers had already fulfilled the conditions. However, he himself did not have enough strength to go up, and his brothers also could not go up. So, he could only choose to sacrifice himself. Let his brothers go to the destined place of the Tribulation Brothers to fight against the extraterrestrial demons, so the so-called tribulation mending the heavens wasn't to mend the hole in the sky, nor was it to extend the time limit for the heavenly calamity that was about to collapse. It was to quell the purple cloud heavens, Chu Yang said slowly. But the three of them were already in a daze. Their eyes were blank and lifeless. Chapter 24:34. Chu Yang's gaze was fixed on their faces. The three of them were completely unaware of this and continued to sit there in a daze. Golden robes. The sudden flash of golden light when the eyes were operating, the golden light from the bones when the enemy slashed his body. An almost indestructible body. Was this the so-called immortal golden body? The minds of the three of them were churning like a tsunami. After the truth was revealed, that Dharma Supreme, who was also the previous tribulation, was deeply regretful. In the end, he perished together with an extraterrestrial demon that had infiltrated the Double Heavens continent. If it wasn't for his sacrifice, the Double Heavens continent would have fallen into the ravages of that extraterrestrial demon. Chu Yang sighed emotionally. That's not right. It doesn't make sense at all. Shenyuan Changkong suddenly raised his head and looked at Chu Yang fiercely. Even so, those previous tribulation swordmasters didn't have to die. Reality is so cruel. If they didn't die, his brothers were destined to not be able to pass through that passageway. Chu Yang said quietly, they had to sacrifice their physical bodies, souls, and even the fate of their entire family to pour into that hole. In fact, when he killed his brothers with his own hands and used the most despicable words to provoke them, making them hate him, he was already dead. The one who was alive was actually just a walking corpse. After he collected the bodies of his brothers and buried them, at the latest, when they were halfway through the passageway, he would also throw his own body into the passageway, to complete the protection and construction of the last part of the journey. If he didn't do that, everyone's souls would only disperse in that passageway. Not only would they not be able to attain the immortal golden body, but they would all die in there and never be able to come out. The three of them sat there and listened in a daze. For a moment, the three of them seemed to have become three wooden statues. Their eyes were extremely lifeless. So this was the truth back then? We misunderstood Big Brother? Wronged Big Brother? In the silence, only Shenyuan Changkong's voice could be heard asking subconsciously, then, Big Brother's family? When we left, the richest land on the continent was clearly inherited by Boss's family. Even if Boss is no longer around, shouldn't his family have inherited the land from generation to generation? I don't know about that. I only know that every generation of tribulation masters would establish a huge family and enjoy glory for tens of thousands of years. However, there has never been a legend of a descendant of the tribulation swordmaster, not even one. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Oh right, there's only one exception. After the 8th generation tribulation sword master disappeared, his family also disappeared soon after. Only his younger brother and his younger sister-in-law's family were left. But this family was destroyed in the hands of Brother Tribulation's descendants. There's only Brother Tribulation's big clan in the world. There's never been a 10th super clan, KAKA. The three people on the other side were gritting their teeth. Tears welled up in her eyes. Suddenly, boom. Yang Fei slapped on the table and yelled, those ungrateful bastards. How could they? How could they? How could they? How could they? Shenyuan Changkong sniffed. His eyes were completely red, and his chest was still heaving up and down rapidly. However, he brazenly raised his head and locked his cold gaze on Chu Yang. I don't believe what you're saying. How can these things be known by everyone in the heavenly layer continent? If what you've said is true, then it's undoubtedly top secret information. How do you know about it? Chu Yang sighed deeply and said, your suspicions are very reasonable. What I just said is indeed not something that everyone knows. It is indeed an absolute secret. He smiled and said, but I know it. Moreover, I know it completely. Why? Give me a reason. Shenyuan Changkong's sharp eyes looked at Chu Yang. Chu Yang pulled Mo Ching Wu over and smiled, because my wife's brother is one of the Tribulation Brothers. And he's the brains of the Tribulation Brothers. Mo Ching Wu exclaimed and looked at Chu Yang. Shenyuan Changkong looked at Mo Ching Wu and finally nodded slowly. Next, he didn't ask Chu Yang. Instead, he asked Mo Ching Wu a few inconspicuous but crucial questions. However, these questions weren't a problem for Mo Ching Wu, who was Tribulation's brainchild's younger sister. They were things that she had experienced personally, so she just told them the truth. Moreover, Shenyuan Changkong would never dream that this brainchild's younger sister was actually one of the tribulations, a female tribulation that had never been seen before. And she was the wife of the tribulation sword master. It could be said that this brainchild's younger sister could answer the questions that tribulation's brainchild couldn't answer, let alone some ordinary thing. After asking a few crucial questions in a row, and being answered by Mo Qingwu fluently, Shenyuan Changkong finally gave up. He sat down in a daze, as if his spirit was suddenly sucked out. The other two, Yang Fei and Yang Zong, were already dumbfounded. In front of Chu Yang and the other two, it was obvious that the three of them were trying hard to restrain themselves. However, their breathing became heavier and heavier. Finally, swoosh swoosh swoosh, a few lines of hot tears flowed down the three brothers' cheeks. They didn't say anything. They just sat there in a daze, crying in a daze. They didn't make any sound, but it was as if they were dead. Smack. Yang Fei slapped his own face hard and scolded, "Yang Fei, you're a bastard." This slap was so hard that his face swelled up instantly. Yang Zong also raised his hand, wanting to hit himself. However, after thinking for a while, he suddenly slapped Shenyuan Changkong's face hard. Boom. Shenyuan Changkong was sent flying. Yang Zong suddenly stood up and scolded, "What did I say back then? Fuck, it's you bastards who insisted that you were framed. Fuck, where did you get so many delusions of being framed? At that time, I said that maybe Big Brother had his reasons. What did you say?" As he spoke, he suddenly burst into tears. He slapped his own face and cried, "Now, you've hated Big Brother for tens of thousands of years, you've scolded Big Brother for tens of thousands of years. Do you feel good now? When you die in the future, how can you face Big Brother in the afterlife? Do you still have any face left?" He suddenly roared like a thunderbolt. Shenyuan Changkong fell to the ground, as if he couldn't stand up anymore. Tears flowed down his face as he said painfully, "Yes, I was wrong, we were all wrong." Yang Fei howled and cried. Chapter 24:35. Facing the situation in front of him, Chu Yang heaved a deep sigh. This time, when he spoke of the past, he purposely spoke in a joking tone, hoping to make the matter as light as possible. But to these iron-blooded men, the truth of the matter was still too heavy for their lives to bear. Originally, Chu Yang didn't think of saying the cruelest thing all at once. But now, he changed his mind. Any concealment would be a great harm to such brothers. Trying to conceal the truth would only lead to more serious consequences. They already had the power and the right to know the truth, even if the truth was so hard to accept. Not only did they need the truth, but the dead also needed justice. The crying of the three gradually stopped, but their bodies were still trembling slightly. They were still grieving and still unable to accept it. But in front of outsiders, they only lost their composure for a moment before regaining their emotions. Blood flowed out from the corner of Shenyuan Changkong's mouth. That was an internal injury caused by the backlash of using his own cultivation to suppress the grief in his heart. However, he ignored his injuries and forced himself to take a deep breath. This breath seemed to have sucked in a lot of the surrounding white fog into his stomach. It seemed to have buried all the grief and bitterness deep in his heart. "Brother Chu, our hearts are in a mess." Shenyuan Changkong took a deep breath and said word by word, "The three of you, please take a rest for the time being. Let us sort out our emotions carefully before we continue our conversation." Chu Yang stood up. He said, "Understood, understood. This is what we should do." Shenyuan Changkong smiled bitterly and said, "The three of you go out and turn left. There's another room over there. The facilities are rather simple and crude. I'm sorry to have neglected your highness. But now, we can't suppress the emotions in our hearts. It's really inappropriate for us to receive more distinguished guests." He tried hard to control himself and said to Zi Sheqing, "Your highness, please forgive us." Zi Sheqing nodded silently and said softly, "From your reactions, I can tell that you're probably the famous brothers of the previous generation." The sword master got what he wanted. His wish was fulfilled early. Such a sacrifice should be within his calculations. But I believe it more. No matter what, His spirit in heaven wouldn't want to see his brothers hurt and grieving. She paused for a moment and deliberated for a long time. Finally, she didn't continue speaking and held Mo Qingwu's arm. He followed Chu Yang out. The three figures gradually disappeared. Shenyuan Changkong sat on the chair in a daze, as if he had completely lost consciousness. After a long time, she finally let out a soft sigh. With this sigh, the tears that she had been holding back burst out of her eyes once again. After Chu Yang and the others left, the three of them sat quietly on the chairs and thought about the past. She quietly wept. Other than the sound of her tears dripping onto the ground, it was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Outside, on the bridge that led to where they came from, white fog filled the air and drifted back and forth. In this kind of white fog, nothing could be seen clearly. It was hazy. This white fog had existed for an unknown amount of time. It seemed that ever since the double celestial palace and the purple cloud heavens came into existence, the fog had always existed here. Perhaps in the Ming dynasty or the future, it would continue to exist forever. Isn't it just like everything else in the world? No one could see what was on the other side of the fog of life. Chu Yang, Mo Qingwu, and Zi Xiecheng sat silently in the room on the other side, facing each other in silence. Right now, they really had nothing to say. In the face of such a situation, they could neither advise nor not advise. But they had to say that things had changed with the passage of time. Heroes couldn't be wronged, and comradeship couldn't be erased. But such a truth brought great sorrow to the survivors. It hurt even more. Chu Yang looked up to the sky and sighed. He murmured, "How can everything in the world be perfect?" Zi Xiecheng sighed and said softly, "How can everything in the world go according to one's wishes? Everyone knows how to reason, but when it comes to it, how many people can be exempted?" Mo Qingwu also sighed softly and said in a daze, "If the Tribulation Sword Master that the elders followed was still alive, that would be the best." Chu Yang and Zi Xiecheng sighed at the same time. Still alive? Is it possible? Is it possible? Chu Yang asked himself in his heart. Suddenly, a dejected sigh came from outside. That was Shenyuan Changkong's voice. At this moment, Shenyuan Changkong and the other two had already walked out of the room. They sat down side by side on this extremely steep first bridge and looked at the vast sea of clouds in a daze. "The blood in my chest can burn my dreams. I should have no regrets as long as my brothers are here. Side by side, we can turn the world around as one. Tribulation brothers have no regrets as long as they are alive." Suddenly, Shenyuan Changkong recited softly. This was a song that was circulated in the heavenly continent when the brothers gathered together in the past. It was a song about how they robbed their brothers back then. However, this song hadn't been recited for tens of thousands of years. Because as long as they recited it, they would think of that incident back then, that person. Although everyone had dreamt of it countless times in the middle of the night, and their hearts were always spinning, not forgetting the slightest detail, who would be able to say it out loud? Who would be able to say it out loud? But now, it had resurfaced in the world once again here. Yang Zong and Yang Fei's tears fell like rain as they continued sobbing softly. "The path under my feet, the sword in my hand, flattening the mountains and breaking the heavens, tribulation sword, hot-bloodedness and righteousness move the world. Who can be a hero? Tribulation Sword Master is named Duan Tian. Tribulation Sword Master, Duan Tian. It's hard to succeed, but it's also hard to fail. The 3-foot-long sword looks down on the world. Since ancient times, success or failure has not been determined by the heavens. Once the sword strikes, the heavens and the earth turn cold, drifting and going without a name. Tribulation Brothers First Tess. Tribulation Brothers First, success or failure has not been determined. The ancestral spirit river will be passed down forever. The autumn wind is bleak and the river is cold. Tribulation Brothers Second, Jiang Shanghan. Pulling up the vast sky, there is Shenyuan. The stars in the palm change. The sun and moon in the heart are cold. Once the sword strikes, ghosts and gods will be shocked. Wisdom can turn the heavens. Tribulation Heart, sitting upright on the unmoving mountain, strategizing, with a snap of the fingers, talking and laughing can overturn the heaven. Tribulation Brothers Fifth. Tribulation Brain, Shenyuan Changkong. Gari Cheungxiao, long sky swallow, spreading its wings and soaring between the heavens and the earth. Tribulation brothers Yang Fei. The three of them recited softly. As they recited, tears flowed down their cheeks. Their hearts were bitter and unspeakable. This recitation was almost instinctive. It wasn't because their hearts had returned to the past at the beginning of the recitation. That was the most memorable moment. The time when the group of brothers gathered in the past, every moment, and every event slipped past their eyes bit by bit. The memories that they thought they hadn't gone through for tens of thousands of years, the past that they thought they had long forgotten. At this moment, it was as vivid as a painting. As if it was yesterday. The past was unbearable to recall. So it was all in the heart. The past singing and drinking, the past fighting side by side, the past singing and laughing, the past riding horses in the martial world. Vaguely, that extremely familiar face suddenly appeared in everyone's minds. Black hair, a square face, a tall and straight figure, dressed in white, and a deep gaze. Those two sharp gazes were like swords, as if they were going to pierce through time and space. The long river of time from tens of thousands of years ago shone on the faces of the three once again. The three of them trembled at the same time as if they felt the heartfelt gaze of those two eyes. Sharp, and cold, but when he looked at them, these sharp eyes were filled with endless care and gentleness. Shenyuan Changkong suddenly covered his face and cried out, "Boss!" His voice was like the cry of an ape deep in the mountains, and it was heart-wrenching. Boss Yang Fei looked up at the sky and screamed. Suddenly, he spat out a mouthful of blood and laughed bitterly. "You're so cruel. You're so cruel. You're so cruel." But now, "you're so cruel" and the previous curses and complaints contained a completely different meaning. "You're so cruel." To yourself, thinking of what Chu Yang said just now, the three of them were heartbroken. The past tribulation sword masters used their bodies to open the path of reincarnation and opened the door to the outer realm. Their bones were the walls, their flesh paved the way, their blood became the wind, and their souls became the sky. They sent my brothers to the outer realm to fight the extraterrestrial demons. They nurtured my brothers and reconstructed their bodies to become immortal golden bodies. They helped my brothers to become powerful in the outer realm and achieve immortal achievements. They let my brothers enjoy the glory of the heavens and the earth and receive the supreme glory. Boss, we're already fighting the extraterrestrial demons in the outer realm, but, where are you? Where did you go? Boss, we're already immortal golden bodies, but what about you? We've already achieved immortal achievements, but you've left behind eternal infamy. We're already, boss. Back then, when you cleaned up our corpses, did your heart hurt? You must have been heartbroken. When all your brothers left and you were the only one left, did you regret it? You must have regretted it. You didn't regret it. You knew that we'd live in hatred of you ever since. Could you really be so calm? But we've misunderstood you for so many years and scolded you for so many years. Now that we know the truth, how can we endure it? The three of them cried, unable to speak. After a long time, Shenyuan Changkong suddenly stood up and let out a long howl. His howl pierced through metal and stone and spread far and wide. Then, somewhere far away, a similar long howl suddenly rang out, one after another. Shenyuan Changkong stood up suddenly with red eyes and strode into Chu Yang's room. When the door opened, Chu Yang and the other two looked at each other in shock. Shenyuan Changkong stared at Chu Yang with red eyes. For a long time, he didn't say a word. He just stared at Chu Yang. Finally, he took a deep breath and said, "You said earlier that you want to pay respects to the purple firmament Heavenly Emperor?" Chu Yang frowned and looked at him. Before he could say anything, he heard Shenyuan Changkong say heavily, "We've thought about it. We'll send you there. We'll send you there at all cost. As long as we're still breathing, you'll be safe." Shenyuan Changkong's handsome expression even had a hint of hysterical determination. "Let's set it at 10 hours later. Everyone, set off." "Why?" asked Zi Sheqing, puzzled. "Not long ago, you were still desperately trying to stop us with no room for negotiation. Why did you suddenly change your mind now?" "I'm back. I can only say that I'm so tired that I'm half dead. Not only physically tired, but also mentally, and that. Chapter 24:36. Because the heavenly emperor of purple clouds is a hero that we all deeply admire. Shenyuan Changkong laughed bitterly, as if he was murmuring subconsciously, heroes should not leave any regrets, no matter whether they live or die. The daughter of the heavenly emperor came to pay respects to him, so we should do our best. No matter what the final result is, no matter what the price is, the heavenly emperor of purple clouds should be paid respects to by his own flesh and blood. It doesn't matter if he's alive or not, we have to send his descendants to his side out of love for him, and then, we will escort them back safely. After Shenyuan Changkong finished, he turned around and left. When he reached the door, he paused and murmured, "We have already left regrets, and it is hard to make up for it. How can we create another regret?" Ha ha ha. His laughter was bitter. His figure had already disappeared at the door. Chu Yang sighed deeply. Chu Yang, your story has driven them crazy. Zi Sheqing sighed softly. Chu Yang said heavily, there is no other way. They will know the truth sooner or later. Instead of letting others say it, it is better for me, the current tribulation swordmaster, to say it. More importantly, the current battle against the extraterrestrial demons is the best time to express their emotions, and you going to pay respects to your father this time also gives them the best reason to express their emotions. If we don't let them express all the negative emotions in their hearts, do we really have to watch such heroes commit suicide out of guilt? Zi Sheqing sighed. But they also have the same intention to die now, Chu Yang nodded. He also vaguely noticed this just now. Zi Sheqing sighed. I'm afraid that this trip will be accompanied by many casualties. And for these people, any casualty will be a great loss. If you hadn't hinted at me with your eyes, I would have changed my mind just now. Chu Yang's eyes flashed. He said, this. I have my own plans. The past tribulation sword masters are heroes, but his brothers are also heroes. I will try my best not to let anything happen to them. His gaze turned to Mo Qingwu. Qingwu, I will leave this matter to you. Mo Qingwu nodded deeply. At this time, there were figures moving rapidly in the distance. Dozens of figures rushed over from all directions. What is it? Someone asked anxiously, why did the few of you send out the summoning signal that should not be sent out unless the extraterrestrial demons invaded? Chu Yang looked at the people rushing over from afar. But, he suddenly realized something. It could be said that he was enlightened or moved. The people who came were clearly divided into 7 camps, or perhaps it should be 7 groups of people. In between, one could even clearly feel that there was a clear distinction between the two. There was no doubt that the relationship between these people was very friendly. It seemed that there was no difference between parties. They were partners who worked together for the same goal. However, one could clearly feel that they were different and belonged to different factions. Every group of people came side by side. The distance between each other was just right, forming a special formation to help each other. It was as if every one of them had placed all their attention on the brothers beside them, completely ignoring the fact that their own weaknesses had already been exposed. However, when everyone was doing this, all their weaknesses became non-existent. Or, it was a fatal temptation that was enough to lure any enemy. Although the color of everyone's clothes was different, everyone's skin and eyes were flowing with a kind of faint golden color. Immortal golden body. Everyone was in this state. However, among these 7 groups of people, other than his own brothers who cooperated seamlessly, the other groups all maintained a kind of distance from him. This kind of distance was very subtle. They could help each other and live and die together, but they couldn't live and die together. Live and die together and live and die together. How big was the difference? Chu Yang didn't know, but Chu Yang could feel such a small difference. A total of 7 groups. How can there be 7 groups? There shouldn't be so many. Chu Yang thought of a sentence. Most of the tribulation's sword masters chose to sacrifice themselves at the critical moment to help their brothers, except for the first tribulation's sword master who chose to really kill his brothers to help himself. But in the end, He was suppressed under the lake of death and had a tragic ending. And that time, Qin Fang, the first tribulation's sword master, Diwu Chochang, caused a change in the fixed trajectory. That means that the rest of them were already destroyed. How can there be 7 groups? Could it be that Diwu Chochang's group of brothers didn't actually die? Chu Yang's heart had already skipped a lot of time and thought of many things. The first group of people came first. A person came together. From the other people's silent acceptance of him as the leader, and from the expressions of these people, Chu Yang could guess that this person might be a brother of the second tribulation's sword master, Feng Yun. In other words, he was in the first group of people to arrive at the heavenly imperial court and was the first to start fighting the heavenly demons. On his face, other than the traces of time, there was also an obvious sense of steadiness. This was an awe-inspiring demeanor that could only be cultivated after experiencing life and death for a long time and standing on the edge of life and death with a clear conscience. This kind of awe-inspiring demeanor made people feel heartfelt admiration at first sight. The second group of people came with a whoosh. They were the brothers of the third tribulation's sword master, Meng Kang. The third group only had people in this group, and this person looked the most anxious. The moment he came, he clustered around Shenyuan Changkong and the other 2. Every one of them looked extremely concerned. This person was obviously the other brothers of the fourth tribulation's swordmaster, Duan Tian. Only they would be so concerned about Shenyuan Changkong and the other 2. The fourth group also didn't have people. There were only 8 of them. The moment they arrived, they sized up Chu Yang. Chu Yang didn't know any of these people, but their expressions revealed an indescribable sense of friendliness. There was also an indescribable sense of excitement. It was as if their long-cherished wish was about to be fulfilled, or had already been fulfilled. When they saw Chu Yang, it was as if they saw the person they respected the most, the person they felt the most guilty about, and the person they missed the most. It was a complicated feeling. Chu Yang instantly realized that these people must be the brothers of the fifth tribulation's swordmaster, Yun Dong. They were also Wu Ju Cheng's brothers. Only these people knew about Chu Yang and the others and showed kindness from the start. Because they already knew everything from Wu Ju Cheng. Looking at these people, a sentence appeared in Chu Yang's mind: I stand on the firmament and point my sword at by Yun Dong. I'm Yun Dong. Who dares to touch my brothers? It was as if there was already a person in white holding a sword and flying in the sky. When Chu Yang showed such a fascinated expression, the eyes of the 8 people became even more agitated. Some of them already had tears in their eyes. Because, at this moment, they were thinking of the same person. There were also only 8 people in the 5th batch, but they looked very tired. According to the order, they should be the brothers of the 5th tribulation's swordmaster, Qin Fang. Looking at them, Chu Yang couldn't help but feel puzzled. At this moment, Zi Sheqing's questioning gaze also came over. That day, Chu Yang and Zi Sheqing were both involved. Diwu Chochang's words were still vaguely by his ears. But now, these people appeared in front of him. How can they still be alive? Didn't all of their divine souls vanish and their souls scatter? Chu Yang was really puzzled. That day, Diwu Chochang had said that the reason why he could escape and return to the heavenly layer was because he absorbed the spirits of all his brothers. That was how he survived the devouring of the black hole. Thinking of this, Chu Yang couldn't help but think of his old enemy, the Dharma Supreme, Diwu Chochang. The Dharma Supreme who had been waiting for the right opportunity for tens of thousands of years to avenge his brothers. The original hero who had transformed into a formidable person. For his purpose, for his hatred, he didn't hesitate to shed the blood of the entire heavenly layer. Diwu Chochang. Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. But he inadvertently noticed that there was an empty seat between these 8 people. It was either intentional or unintentional. Chu Yang thought. This space must have been left for Diwu Chochang. If Diwu Chochang was there, the whole formation would become flawless. But, now that there was one less person, it seemed like there was a lot less, and there was an additional huge flaw. But they would rather keep this flaw, but also this space, even though each of them knew that the brother who belonged to this space would never come here. Chu Yang looked at that empty space and stared at it for a long time. He sighed in his heart. Dharma Supreme, if you knew the situation now, would you regret it? The first batch was a complete group of people. This batch should be the brothers of the seventh tribulation's sword master, Lin Zun. The man in gold whom Chu Yang and the other two had seen on the road sign was among them. The seventh batch was also a complete group of people. They were also the group that gave Chu Yang the strongest feeling. The reason why Chu Yang had such a strong feeling wasn't because their strength surpassed the others, but because Chu Yang had already determined the origins of these people. They were a group of brothers of the 8th generation tribulation sword master, Jun Lai. And the strongest enemy that Chu Yang and the others faced in overturning the heavenly layer, the great ruling clan, was the direct descendant of this person. Chu Yang suddenly felt that the day when he left the heavenly layer seemed to be very, very far away, as hazy as his previous life. The 8 people of the 4th batch didn't pay attention to the others, but just walked up to Chu Yang. The leader looked at Chu Yang with an unusually sharp gaze and said softly, "You are Chu Yang, right?" Chu Yang nodded and smiled. "Yes, I am Chu Yang." That person's body trembled, and the eyes of the 8 people suddenly shone with extreme passion. At the same time, they looked at Chu Yang's waist. Chapter 24:37. At the waist. It was a common place for ordinary people to hang their scabbards. Although everyone knew that they couldn't see it, because the sword of the Tribulation Sword Master never needed to be worn, their eyes still stayed at that place for a long time. They wanted to see something. They wanted to see something. The leader took a deep breath, looked up at Chu Yang, and said in a low voice, "I'm Jun Veiling." Chu Yang said, "I've heard so much about you. I think Elder Wu Ju Cheng has already seen you." Jun Veiling couldn't hide his excitement and eagerness. He nodded slightly and asked in a low voice, "Where are your brothers?" Chu Yang said seriously, "They're all in the Heavenly Imperial Court now. Although they don't have your indestructible golden bodies, they came up with us that day." It could be seen that Jun Veiling was trying hard to suppress the sadness in his heart. He and his brothers looked at Chu Yang with strong envy. They seemed to want to say something, but they didn't. In the end, they just moved their lips and said in a dry voice, "Thank you." Chu Yang carefully listened to these 2 words. He felt as if his heartstrings had been violently plucked. "What are you thanking me for? Are you thanking me about Wu Ju Cheng? Or are you thanking me about the truth of that year?" Chu Yang listened carefully and said in the same way, "You're welcome." Jun Veiling swallowed his saliva. He looked sad as if he was about to cry. Then he took a deep breath and said, "Can you?" The 8 brothers showed strong desire in their eyes at the same time. Some of them had tears in their eyes. Chu Yang understood immediately. They wanted to worship the Tribulation Sword. That was the weapon used by their boss in the past. Chu Yang was about to speak. Suddenly, he saw more than 50 people turn to look at him. The leader asked loudly, "Who is the sister of the current Tribulation Sword Master?" Mo Qingwu was shocked. She walked out slowly and said, "I am." That person's sharp eyes locked on Mo Qingwu. He said, "5th in the Tribulation Sword Master?" Mo Qingwu shook her head and said respectfully, "No, 2nd in the Tribulation Sword Master, 3rd in the Tribulation Sword Master." That person was shocked. He said, "2nd in the Tribulation Sword Master? 3rd in the Tribulation Sword Master?" Mo Qingwu nodded. Mo Qingwu's answer had shocked almost everyone. In the history of the Tribulation, he was ranked 5th. The 5th position didn't seem to be in the front, but it was the core position of the Tribulation Brothers. But Mo Qingwu said that this generation's think tank was actually ranked 2nd. The 2nd Tribulation? Of course, the most shocking part was the next sentence, "Brother is 3rd. That person swayed and said, "3rd brother? Who was the leader?" "Calamity Sword Master is the boss." Mo Qingwu continued to nod. The gazes of the 11 people simultaneously focused on Mo Qingwu. She was the younger sister of the current Tribulation's think tank. Tribulation. Calamity Sword Master. It had been far too long since he had uttered these words. Perhaps it had been 10,000 years, or 20,000 years, or even longer. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he didn't dare. He didn't dare to say it. Once he did, he would recall those happy days when he rode his horse freely in the martial world. Chu Yang felt a little relieved. Just from this simple conversation, it was clear that a large portion of these people did not know the truth. Unveils and the other 7 people should have already known his true identity from Wu Jueqing, and the fate of the Calamity Swordmaster. But the others still didn't know. And the sad story of the past Calamity Swordmasters had not been announced by Unveils and the others. Shenyuan Changkong and the others who had just found out also didn't have the time to say it now. Chu Yang was somewhat puzzled about this situation. Since Unveils and the others knew the truth, why didn't they seek justice for their boss and reveal the truth? But after thinking about it for a while, he had connected the dots. It was reasonable that Unveils and the others didn't reveal the truth. Such a thing, no matter who it was, would be an extremely serious blow. Why would they reveal it so hastily? They had to choose an appropriate time. Obviously, they didn't get such an opportunity until Chu Yang and the others came. Chu Yang inexplicably heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, that scene didn't happen. Otherwise, facing 50 big crying men at the same time would be quite uncomfortable. Shenyuan Changkong's brothers surrounded the 3 of them with concern. Every one of them was astonished. Why do these 3 brothers seem to have cried so hard today? Why was everything so wrong? Could it be that something had happened? At this moment, that person asked, "You're the younger sister of this generation's calamity. Then, where's your brother now?" Everyone who didn't know the truth heard this question, and everyone's breathing quickened a little. Mo Qingwu smiled and said, "My brother, of course, is in the Heaven Imperial Court now. Didn't Chu Yang say that we ascended together?" That person asked, "Why didn't he come here?" This sentence was worth studying. The destiny of the past calamities, or rather, the final destination, was to fight the extraterrestrial demons in the purple cloud heavens. But this generation's calamity broke this tradition and didn't come here. Did something special happen, or was everything in front of them just a scam? Mo Qingwu pretended not to know and replied calmly, "Actually, we all just ascended not long ago. My brother is still working hard in other worlds, building his own forces in preparation to eliminate the demons in the future." Many people were deep in thought. That person asked again, "Other than your brother, what about the others?" Everyone ascended through the normal way. Mo Qingwu nodded affirmatively. "Then, is the Calamity Sword Master here too?" That person continued to ask. "Of course. Didn't I say just now? Everyone ascended together to the Heaven Imperial Court." Mo Qingwu nodded. Her delicate brows furrowed, and she deliberately showed a trace of impatience. However, his shrewd eyes were observing the reactions of these people. Confusion and envy appeared on the faces of the 40 to 50 people at the same time. It turned out that in this generation, no one had been separated, they had all come up together in one piece. What an enviable thing. But, why could they all ascend together? Why didn't the Calamity Sword Master use them to nourish the heavens? This was undoubtedly a huge mystery. Or, was everything in front of them a scam set up by someone? "You mean, the Calamity Sword Master of your generation also came to the Heaven Imperial Court now?" That person's Adam's apple bobbed. When he said the words Calamity Sword Master, his voice was unusually dry, as if his throat was torn. "Yes." Mo Qingwu still nodded. "May I know the name of this generation's Calamity Sword Master?" That person asked solemnly. Mo Qingwu quickly said, "It's not convenient for me to tell you this for the time being." That person was stunned when he heard that, and then he nodded. "Since it's not convenient, then forget it. We won't force you." Calamity Sword Master, these words, or these people, had always been a taboo existence in everyone's hearts. In fact, when Mo Qingwu said "I can't tell you," many people who still didn't know the truth heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. Although Mo Qingwu refused to tell the truth and created more chances of it being a scam, everyone didn't care too much. What everyone was most afraid of was facing the bloody past of that year, that unforgettable pain. Now, if this little girl didn't want to say it, then so be it. It was just right to delay for a while more. You all want to pay respects to the purple cloud heavenly emperor? That person changed the question and changed the topic at the same time. Yes. Mo Qingwu looked at him and said, "May I ask who you are?" This was the first question that Mo Qingwu asked in return after answering many questions passively. But this question made a trace of pain appear on the face of the burly man in golden clothes in front of her. Especially, in front of so many people with the same identity and the same experience, this question was even more uncomfortable. Who am I? The burly man in golden clothes smiled sadly. My name is Ji Huitian. I'm the person in charge of this place. After saying this sentence 3 times, Ji Huitian actually lowered his head. This sentence was said very weakly, and it was really a world of difference from the aggressiveness just now. The words one of Calamity's brothers that almost came out of his mouth were actually swallowed back. Beside him, everyone's face was gloomy. He actually felt inferior in front of the little sister of Tribulation's brain. Look at them, Brother Calamity even brought his family up, and what about us? This gap is too big. Ji Huitian sighed, but looked up at the sky again. After a moment of silence, he asked again, "Your Brother Calamity's sister? Then we're not outsiders. These two are your friends. Why do you want to pay respects to the heavenly emperor of purple firmament?" Mo Qingwu was silent for a moment, and said, "Of course I also have the intention to pay respects to the heavenly emperor of purple firmament, but I'm not the key to this matter. This sister beside me is the daughter of the heavenly emperor of purple firmament." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Even Cheng Feifei, Jiang Shanghan, and the others who were surrounding the 3 brothers and asking about their well-being were shocked and looked up. The daughter of the heavenly emperor of purple firmament. What a noble and great identity this was. In the eyes of these iron-blooded men who had been fighting in purple firmament for tens of thousands of years, the heavenly emperor of purple firmament was an indelible monument, the greatest hero in the world. Even the saint who was recognized as the #1 person in the heavenly imperial court was not as important as the heavenly emperor of purple firmament in their heart. The daughter of the heavenly emperor of purple firmament was naturally 1,000 times more noble than the saint's bloodline. 10,000 times. No. Ji Huitian's first reaction was to refuse. This is too dangerous. Absolutely not. Beside him, someone said, "I think this must be done. For Brother Calamity's sister, and for the bloodline of purple firmament." Ji Huitian turned his head and looked at the person who spoke in disbelief. Chapter 2438. Jun Veiling was the first to speak, and the 7 brothers behind him expressed their support without hesitation. Cheng Feifei and the others were about to speak, but they heard Shenyuan Chongkong say, "The purple firmament heavenly emperor should be worshipped by his descendant. This is a hero's regret. In order to not let the hero have any regrets, we must complete this even if we have to die." Cheng Feifei swallowed the words of objection that were about to come out of his mouth, and said solemnly, "That's right." Although he was curious about why Shenyuan Chongkong was acting so strangely today, since his brother had made a choice, then even if he had to bring all his brothers to climb a mountain of swords and sea of flames, he could only support. Support without hesitation. There was no second sentence. Ji Huitian looked at the 2 camps strangely, and he only felt that it was ridiculous. Behind Ji Huitian, a gentle-looking young man also looked at the 2 groups of people in front of him with a surprised gaze. What's wrong with these people today? Why are they acting so strangely? Forcefully carrying out something that they know is impossible, this is really too unusual. Although these people were all brothers of the past, and they were definitely in the same camp on this battlefield, there was absolutely no subordinate relationship between them. For each group of people, only the people in their group could make the decision. No matter what the other groups said, as long as one person disagreed, it was equivalent to the whole group disagreeing. On the contrary, if one person here made the decision, then no matter whether it was right or wrong, the others would unconditionally support it. Especially in front of outsiders, this was even more obvious. Beside him, someone said, "I, Lu Long, also feel that this is feasible. For the descendants of the purple firmament heavenly emperor, even if it's a little risky, it's worth it." As soon as Lu Long spoke, his brothers all nodded their heads to express their agreement. Another wave of people. Ji Huitian looked at these people in shock. This group of people were not reckless people. Even if there was a resourceful think tank in each group, the others were not idiots either. Why did they collectively change their minds in such a short time? Just as he was thinking about the pros and cons, he heard his brother behind him say, "Since that's the case, let's fight this battle." Killing in and out of the heavenly demon camp is also a deterrent. Besides, isn't this the purple firmament heavenly emperor's wish? No matter what, we have to help complete it. Ji Huitian was stunned. He turned around to look at that junior. He really couldn't figure out why his brother's strategist had changed his mind at this moment. However, he saw Nyan Sha winking at him. "I'm afraid there's more to it than meets the eye, and it's probably something very important. Let's take it one step at a time." Even if these people are dishonest, they won't be hostile. At the very least, they won't cheat others. That's true. Ji Huitian rubbed his chin. When robbing brothers or facing enemies, every one of them could turn into an executioner, but when facing their own people, they would never set up an ambush. It was normal for tribulation brothers from different camps and different eras to risk their lives to fight for each other, but it was absolutely impossible for them to cheat others. At this point, Ji Huitian also expressed his agreement. "That's good. Let's go together and kill 7 times. With Ji Huitian's approval, the others no longer had any reason to object. The group of warlike people split into groups and cheered. Finally, they could let go of their hands and feet and kill to their heart's content. The current situation was actually moving in a very accidental but inevitable direction. Just like this, Chu Yang and the others rushed forward with a large wave of war fanatics. Just as they started to walk, Chu Yang and the others felt a special feeling at the same time. It was a kind of estrangement that wasn't obvious, but it really existed. The 3 of them were accidentally and inevitably wrapped together. Of course, this was a more conservative way of saying it. If the current situation was described in a less conservative way, it should be that they were excluded from all groups. And the feeling between other groups was even more obvious. But everyone was used to this situation and didn't feel offended. In fact, they were even willing to endure it. On one hand, it was certainly difficult for anyone to integrate into their camp. More importantly, they didn't need others to join their camp. They didn't want their feelings of tens of thousands of years to change because of the addition of new blood. When your camp needs me, I can charge and break through the enemy lines for you, and even sacrifice my life on the battlefield. I have no regrets if I die for you. However, my emotional world is the original one, only the original one. It's the original. No matter when or where, my heart is the same. Although I was hurt and hurt before, but I don't want to lose it now, and I don't want to be divided. Walking quietly in such a strange atmosphere, one could feel infinite security because they would protect you with their lives. But one could also feel a kind of strong rejection and an insurmountable estrangement. Chu Yang thought of something Yarrow Ningning had said before, "I like you people very much. When I'm alone with each of you, I especially like it, and I'm especially happy. But once all of you are together, I feel that there's no place for me anymore. Even if I force my way in, I'm just one person, an extra person." This was Yarrow Ningning's original words. In fact, everyone sincerely treated him as their own brother, but not as Brother Jie. There were only these few Brother Jie, and no more. It was only at this moment that Chu Yang truly understood the true meaning of Yarrow Ningning's words. At the same time, he also understood why Yarrow Ningning was so silent in Moyanshan. But this was an unsolvable problem that had no solution at all. Along the way, they passed through more than 10 such checkpoints. This road was really very long. Everyone didn't know how long they had walked for. Anyway, it had already been a very long time. Fortunately, there was an end to the road. At the end of the white fog, a trace of light finally appeared in front of them. Ji Huitian's gaze was deep. He said in a low voice, "We're about to reach the purple cloud heavens. It's hard to guarantee that this place will be peaceful. You must be careful, Anne. I hope that all of you, especially the princess, after seeing the current situation of the purple cloud heavens, don't feel too sad. Zhi Xiaoqing gritted her teeth and nodded lightly. A strand of hair fell down as she nodded, floating with the wind. Her hair floated. At this moment, Zhi Xiaoqing suddenly burst into tears. This is the wind of the purple cloud heavens, blowing my hair. It's as if my mother has felt my arrival and is gently stroking my hair. Is this the smell of my mother? A sudden cold wind, accompanied by a kind of smoke mixed with murderous intent, quietly swept over. All the previous generations of Tribulation brothers narrowed their eyes slightly, their whole body on guard. Another person who had an abnormal reaction was Chu Yang. The moment he felt the cold wind of the purple cloud heavens, he also felt the purple cloud pagoda in his tribulation space suddenly spinning, emitting an unusually strong battle intent. There also seemed to be some commotion in the palace of the Medicine King. At the same time, the tribulation sword flew out, emitting thousands of rays of light in the tribulation space, overflowing with murderous intent. Because what came from outside was the aura of the extraterrestrial demon, the purest aura of the extraterrestrial demon. Chu Yang's murderous intent suddenly rose, and his battle intent overflowed. A ray of sunlight shone slowly from the horizon, but it couldn't penetrate the white fog. It stopped at the edge of the purple cloud heavens. Chu Yang's eyes narrowed unexpectedly. Then, he found himself standing at the end of the bridge, the other end of the first bridge. In front of him was an extremely vast world. However, even though Chu Yang had imagined the legendary purple cloud heavens thousands of times, he didn't expect it to be like this now. Even though he had tried his best to imagine the cruelty of this battlefield, he absolutely didn't expect it to be so cruel. Then, he finally understood why he needed the protection of the immortal golden body to continue fighting the extraterrestrial demons here. Because this was a complete place. Other than the two sides fighting, there was no other living thing. A strong wind blew, and the dust on the ground flew up along with the tornado. Countless round objects danced in the air, drifted, and fell. Looking carefully, the so-called round objects were actually all skulls. There wasn't the slightest bit of land on the ground. All that could be seen were thick and deep bones. Countless broken limbs and countless bones quietly spread out on the ground, forming a thick layer. Occasionally, as the wind blew, they would roll on the ground. Some rolled, and suddenly turned into bone powder, scattering with the wind and dispersing into nothingness. As far as the eye could see, there were endless white bones everywhere, all skeletons. Ji Huitian was expressionless as he struck out with his palm. Under the bridge, a gust of wind blew up, and instantly, a huge pit hundreds of feet deep appeared. However, the pit was still full of white bones. The pile of white bones here is at least 10,000 feet deep. Ji Huitian's expression was solemn. A bunch of skeletons, including those of extraterrestrial demons and humans. The whole world, especially the 3,000 miles of ground near here, is like this. There isn't the slightest bit of green in the whole 4,000 miles of land. There are no plants here that can survive. No animal can reproduce in such an environment. There's no water source, no food, no things necessary for life to survive here. The only thing here is fighting. Ji Huitian stood at the bridge and looked ahead as he said lightly. Not far ahead, there were two groups of people fighting. On the battlefield over there, who is fighting the extraterrestrial demons? Ji Huitian turned back and asked. Chapter 2439. It's the people from Demon Emperor Heaven. A few elite juniors from super sects came here for training and caused an unusual battle. That year warrior answered accurately. Their leaders are 3 saint-level experts and over 30 heavenly human-level experts. The rest are all saint-level experts. Ji Huitian made an en sound and nodded. Is the rescue preparations ready? The year warrior nodded. It's done. It's guaranteed that they can be rescued when only the elites are left. As for the rest, I'm afraid they will die. Ji Huitian nodded. That's right. In the martial world, it's normal for guests to die in a foreign land. It's already not easy to keep the elites. Everyone wore indifferent expressions as they watched the battle in front of them shake the heavens. It was as if they were already used to it. Zhi Xiecheng looked at the two parties fighting on the land of purple cloud heavens and couldn't help but frown. She said, "Aren't you going to help? We have the ability to defeat this group of heavenly demons. Why do we have to sacrifice ourselves? Such a sacrifice is completely unnecessary. As long as you help, you can easily annihilate this group of heavenly demons in an instant. This is obviously an easy task for you, isn't it?" Zhi Xiecheng's tone was a little angry. Seeing those warriors who came from thousands of miles away to fight the heavenly demons but lost their lives here, she felt extremely upset. On the battlefield, screams sounded one after another. It was obvious that there were lives being lost every moment. Ji Huitian and his brothers looked at all this. They looked indifferent and didn't have any intention to do anything. Ji Huitian said softly, "Your Highness, do you know how many people here are here to gild themselves? How many people are actually afraid of death? How many people are not qualified to fight against the heavenly demons? How many people here are the real warriors? All these need to be tested with life and death. Only life and death are the only criteria to test one's qualifications." Ji Huitian said faintly, "Perhaps there will be some who will die unjustly or not, but we can't take care of all these. Some sacrifices are necessary, some sacrifices are self-inflicted, and some sacrifices are meaningful." He said indifferently, "There is a limit to human strength. We have our responsibilities. We have to protect the entire Heaven Imperial Court, not the people who came here to train. There is a fundamental difference." He sighed deeply. Besides, the heavenly demons won't send out their main forces in a battle of this level. However, there are countless super experts lying in ambush. Those people are the real opponents we have to face. If we rashly join the battle, it will only lead to the intervention of the enemy's truly tyrannical combat strength. Our participation will not save them, it will only speed up their death. But you will still take action today." Zhi Xiecheng said sharply. Ji Huitian said indifferently, "But we have to make sure that most of the people in this trial are dead before we make a move. True warriors, heroes, we will not allow them to die. However, those who are greedy and afraid of death and came here to gild themselves can forget about leaving this place alive." He pointed at the battlefield and said, "Do you see that person? Earlier, when the enemy attacked, he hid behind his comrades. This action led to the deaths of his comrades. Although he used the deaths of his comrades as an opportunity to kill Skyfiend in the end, this person is despicable. Even if Skyfiend didn't kill him, I would have killed him. Comrades are entrusted to each other in life and death. They are not used to exchange for fame and glory. And that one, he simply dragged his disciples over to die for him. And that one, he didn't even use his sword from the beginning to the end. That one, haha, what's the use of keeping such a person alive? It's just shameful." Ji Huitian's gaze was sharp. "This is a battlefield. When we are on the battlefield, we are soldiers. Soldiers don't care about power and status. They only care about their mission and dignity. And these people have insulted these few words. So, if these people don't die, we won't make a move. Because we can't tolerate the fact that after giving our strength, the ones we save are actually such bastard." Ji Huitian's words made Zhi Xiecheng silent for a while. Chu Yang sighed deeply. He couldn't help but think of the words of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor, "Why are people's hearts so cold?" And these people who used their comrades as a shield and used their comrades' bodies in exchange for a chance to survive were undoubtedly the perfect interpretation of this sentence. Ji Huitian's words might be a little extreme, but as he said, this is a battlefield. Not a court, not a school. What soldiers respected was always the strong and the heroes. Ji Huitian looked coldly at the battlefield on the other side and said, "We will escort Her Highness to pay respects to the Heavenly Emperor. Then, who will stay here to guard?" He had said these words so casually, but he had given them a choice. After a period of silence, no one was willing to stand out to guard. These people were all iron-blooded men. They all had a thirst for battle that came from their bones. No one would give up such an opportunity. "That's good too." Ji Huitian sighed helplessly. Then, let's leave the original garrisons here to guard. This matter shouldn't be delayed. We'd better set off as soon as possible. At this moment, the battlefield was getting closer and closer. The situation was getting more and more serious. Most of the people that Ji Huitian pointed out had already died tragically in the hands of the heavenly demon. Those who are afraid of death will definitely not be able to endure hardships. If they can't endure hardships, their cultivation won't be high. If their cultivation isn't high, there's only death on this battlefield. Ji Huitian looked coldly and said, "It's about time. Move out." Before he finished speaking, Yang Fei's burly figure suddenly rushed out. He shouted like a thunderbolt, "Gari Qiongxiao, Chang Tianyang, spread your wings and soar between heaven and earth. Who can compare to Fei Lingxiao, brother Jie's 8th test?" Yang Fei rushed out. The burly figure rushed into the crowd of heavenly demons at the first moment. Suddenly, like a wave, a bloody path was opened. But the others were stunned at the same time. Because of one sentence, since when did Yang Fei call himself tribulation again? What was this situation? But no matter what, no matter how regretful, angry, sad, or puzzled they were, when they heard this voice, when they heard the words Brother Jie's 8th test, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, Brother Jie. This was a name that they wished they could forget long ago. In fact, it had long been imprinted in their hearts and could never be erased. Perhaps, it was once a pain that life couldn't bear, but it was also the happiest period of their lives. The most glorious and glorious period of their lives. As soon as they heard these words, everyone felt their blood boil. Unveils. Ji Huitian stood up and shouted like a thunderbolt. "I'm here." Unveils rose into the air. "You and your brothers protect the princess and the other two. Everyone, let's work together and rush out. Let's kill all these heavenly demons first." The moment he finished speaking, Ji Huitian had already taken the lead to fly up. His whole body suddenly shone with golden light in mid-air. His burly and majestic body, with an extremely brilliant sword light, turned into a shooting star in the sky. He took the lead and rushed into the camp of heavenly demons. Charge! No one knew who it was that shouted out loud. So, 7 groups of people rushed out at the same time. Their momentum was unparalleled, and their spirit was shocking. Chu Yang, Mo Qingwu, and the other 2 people were mixed in a small formation formed by Unveils and the other 7 people. For a moment, they couldn't help but move forward passively. In a trance, they felt that they had already rushed into the camp of heavenly demons. The group of people, with Ji Huitian in the lead, swept into the crowd of heavenly demons like a furious dragon. With a long roar, sword light overflowed from their bodies. Thousands of sword lights whizzed out. Screams sounded in waves. Countless grotesquely shaped heavenly demons fell down at this moment. It wasn't a single sword that took their lives, but their bodies were torn apart and they couldn't be more dead. To Chu Yang's surprise, he discovered that during the battle, the bodies of these former tribulations were all emitting brilliant golden light. Furthermore, they were still flickering and not dimming at all. It was as if, as more and more heavenly demons died, the golden light on these people's bodies became more brilliant. Could it be that there was something else? The indestructible golden body wasn't as simple as imagined. Chu Yang thought silently in his heart. Under the protection of such a tyrannical team, they were facing a small group of heavenly demons who weren't very powerful. The 2 sides couldn't be called enemies at all. It was just a one-sided massacre. Chu Yang and the other 2 didn't even have a chance to attack. They just saw these people charge out a bloody path as if they were cutting melons and vegetables. They passed through the tens of thousands of heavenly demons effortlessly. Even when they passed through the back of this group of enemies, the group still didn't stop at all. Their advancing speed didn't decrease but increased instead. They rolled out like a gust of wind and pierced straight into the depths of the vast white bone wasteland. Along the way, the heavenly demons suffered heavy casualties. However, those who were pointed out as cowards, even if they were lucky enough to survive until now, all died strangely without exception. Who did it? They couldn't tell at all. Ji Huitian once said, "Even if the heavenly demons don't kill such people, we have to kill them." Chu Yang sighed in his heart. These people really can't tolerate even a little bit of sand. But on the battlefield, they could entrust their backs to Brother Jie and the others. No matter if they knew them or not, they could completely rest assured. Because these people were the real warriors. They faintly heard someone call out from behind, "Thank you for your help." "May I know?" Jun Veiling and the others completely ignored that question. They had already rushed out thousands of feet away with the group and left the battlefield. They just did it conveniently. Anyway, they had to rush out. So, killing a few more heavenly demons when they rushed out was just a bonus. As for taking credit and accepting thanks, everyone didn't think so. Death is fate, life is luck. This is the battlefield. There's no reason to talk about it. Ji Huitian said lightly as the sword energy rushed out. Hundreds of heavenly demons in front of him exploded at the same time and scattered into the air like blooming plum blossoms. Today, my computer was broken. Actually, it wasn't broken, but I didn't know why it couldn't be turned on. For the whole day, I found many people to fix it. Finally, a brother fixed it. Then, he told me very tactfully, "Brother, don't randomly click on things you don't understand, and don't randomly delete things. You're just typing, so you can just use ORD. Don't worry about other things." Suddenly, I felt like thousands of divine beasts were rushing through a swamp full of mud. In an instant, I was in a mess. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.